Hi there, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Harryverse X. Get ready for an incredible journey as we present what if Gandalf found Harry at Godric's Hollow and the Grey Wizard raised him as the true master of death in Middle-earth. If you find our stories entertaining, a simple like and subscribe would mean everything to us. Your support motivates us to create more. Here we go. Chapter 1, The Child Between Worlds. Magic has a way of calling to magic. That's what Gandalf felt that night, a scream across dimensions, a tear in the fabric of reality. Something catastrophic had happened, something that reached beyond the boundaries of any single world. Gandalf stood at the edge of Rivendell, his weathered face turned toward the east, staff clutched tightly in his hand. The stars above Middle-earth trembled. "I must go," he told Elrond, who had joined him in silence. "This disturbance, it comes from beyond our realm," Elrond said, his ancient eyes reflecting starlight. "The Vala have not spoken of such a crossing." "No," Gandalf agreed. "They haven't. Which is precisely why I must investigate." Without another word, Gandalf closed his eyes and focused his power, not on a location in Middle-earth, but on the source of the magical disruption itself. He let it pull him, guide him, drawing him through veils most beings could never pierce. The world bent around him. Colors swirled into a vortex of light and sound. When reality solidified again, Gandalf found himself standing on a quiet street in a village he'd never seen before. Quaint houses lined cobblestone roads. A light snow was falling, unusual for this time of year. The Grey Wizard oriented himself, following the lingering traces of magical catastrophe. His pace quickened as he sensed death, fresh, violent, and sacrificial in nature. The kind of death that changed destinies. The cottage appeared normal from the outside, except for the blown-out upper floor. Smoke still curled from the destroyed roof. Gandalf approached cautiously, his senses alert to any lingering danger. The front door hung open. A man's body lay just inside, dark-haired, wearing strange clothing, his wand still clutched in rigid fingers. Gandalf passed him with a respectful nod. He could feel the residue of courage in the air, the last stand of a father protecting his family. Upstairs, the devastation intensified. A nursery, partially exposed to the night sky. A woman's body sprawled before a crib, her red hair fanned out around her. And in that crib, impossibly, a living child. A boy, barely more than a year old, with bright green eyes and a lightning-shaped cut on his forehead. The infant wasn't crying. He simply stared at Gandalf with an unnerving intensity. "Hello, young one," Gandalf said softly. The child blinked, then reached toward him with pudgy hands. Gandalf's eyes swept the room, reading the magical signatures like a book. Love magic. Sacrifice. A killing curse rebounded. And something else, something dark and fractured clinging to the child's forehead. "What remarkable magic your mother wielded," he murmured, approaching the crib. "She gave her life for yours, and in doing so, she created protection unlike anything I've seen before." The wizard gently touched the child's forehead, inches from the lightning scar. He recoiled instantly as images flooded his mind, a snake-faced man, green light, screams, and then, fragmentation. A soul splitting apart. "This won't do," Gandalf muttered. "No, this won't do at all." He could sense others approaching, magical folk coming to investigate. He had little time. The wizard had to make a decision. "Harry Potter," he read from the embroidered blanket. "I sense your path here will be difficult. Dark forces already seek you. And this fragment." He frowned at the scar. "You carry a burden no child should bear." Gandalf made his decision. He lifted Harry from the crib just as voices called from outside the house. "I cannot promise your life will be easy," Gandalf told the child, "but I can promise you will not face your destiny unprepared." With that, the Grey Wizard wrapped Harry in his cloak and stepped between worlds once more, taking the child away from the destiny that awaited him in the wizarding world and toward a new one in Middle-earth. "Harry! Harry, where have you gone now?" Gandalf's voice echoed through the gardens of Rivendell. 5 years had passed since he'd brought the child from that other world, and rarely had a day gone by without Harry testing his patience. A giggle came from above. Gandalf looked up to see 6-year-old Harry perched on a branch 20 feet off the ground, grinning down at him. "How did you get up there?" the wizard demanded, though he already knew the answer. "I jumped from the balcony," Harry called down proudly. "But then I couldn't get back. I think I flew a little bit." Gandalf sighed. This was the third incident of accidental magic this week. Harry's powers from his native world were developing alongside his growing awareness, manifesting in ways neither Gandalf nor the elves fully understood. "Stay where you are," Gandalf instructed. "I'm coming up." "No need," Harry replied cheerfully. And before Gandalf could stop him, the boy simply stepped off the branch. Gandalf's heart lurched. He raised his staff, preparing a spell to catch the falling child, but Harry's descent slowed unnaturally. He drifted down like a feather, landing lightly on his feet with a triumphant smile. "See? I knew I could do it again." "Harry Potter," Gandalf said sternly, though he couldn't fully suppress his amazement, "we have discussed this. Your magic is not a toy. It requires discipline and respect." Harry's smile faded slightly. "But how can I learn discipline if you won't teach me to use it? You are still young, I'm 6. Nearly 7. And I can already read all the books Lord Elrond gave me." Gandalf studied the boy. Harry had grown tall for his age, though still skinny. His untamable black hair and bright green eyes marked him as different from the elven children he played with. The lightning scar remained on his forehead, though Gandalf had managed to contain the dark fragment within it, preventing it from influencing the boy. "Very well," Gandalf conceded. "We will begin proper lessons tomorrow. Basic control exercises only." Harry pumped his fist in celebration. "Will I get a staff like yours?" "Certainly not. Perhaps a stick, if you behave." "Master Gandalf." A voice called from the path. An elf approached, leading a pony laden with packs. "The council sends word. The disturbances near the Misty Mountains grow worse. They request your presence." Gandalf frowned. The rifts between worlds had been appearing more frequently lately, small tears through which creatures sometimes slipped. He suspected they were connected to Harry's presence in Middle-earth, though he hadn't determined how. "I must go," he told Harry, who immediately looked crestfallen. "You promised lessons," the boy protested. "And you shall have them when I return. In the meantime." Gandalf reached into his robes and produced a slender piece of wood. "This belonged to your father. I took it from his hand that night. It may respond to your magic differently than the powers of this world, but you should have it nonetheless." Harry accepted the wand with wide eyes. "My father's? James Potter was defending you and your mother when he fell. He was brave until the end." Harry clutched the wand to his chest. "Will you tell me more about them when you come back?" "I will tell you what little I know," Gandalf promised. "Now, behave for Lord Elrond while I'm away. No more jumping from balconies." Harry nodded solemnly, but the mischievous glint never left his eyes. "Focus, Harry. Feel the connection between your mind and the flame." 11-year-old Harry sat cross-legged across from Gandalf, a small candle burning between them. 5 years of training had taught him patience, somewhat. "I'm trying," Harry said through gritted teeth. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he concentrated on the dancing flame. "Don't force it," Gandalf instructed. "Magic in Middle-earth isn't commanded. It's guided." Harry nodded and relaxed his shoulders. He took a deep breath and extended his awareness toward the flame. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flame flickered, grew taller, and split into 2 separate flames on the same candle. "Good!" Gandalf exclaimed. "Now maintain it." Harry struggled to hold his concentration. The dual flames wavered, then suddenly flared up dramatically, nearly singing Gandalf's beard before extinguishing completely. "Sorry!" Harry yelped. "No matter," Gandalf said, patting out a smoldering spot on his robe. "Your control improves. The problem remains that your native magic interferes with your attempts to channel the more subtle energies of Middle-earth." Harry frowned. "Maybe I should focus more on wizard magic. My kind of wizard, I mean." He picked up his father's wand. Over the years, he'd learned it responded to his intentions, though inconsistently. Without proper training in wizarding techniques, his attempts were largely intuitive. "All knowledge is valuable," Gandalf said. "But remember, you live in Middle-earth now. Our magic is tied to the land itself, to the song of creation. Your wizarding powers are remarkable, but without others to teach you their proper use." "I know," Harry sighed. "I just feel caught between worlds sometimes." Gandalf's expression softened. These moments of vulnerability from Harry were rare now. As he approached his teenage years, he'd grown more guarded, more determined to prove himself. "Perhaps we should move on to practical applications," Gandalf suggested. "Theory only engages the mind so long." Harry perked up immediately. "Can we practice combat magic?" "I was thinking more along the lines of healing herbs and—" "Please, Gandalf." Harry interrupted. "The Rangers are coming through Rivendell tomorrow. I heard they fought off trolls near the East Road. I want to be able to help next time something threatens people." Gandalf studied his young apprentice. Harry had always shown a protector's instinct, despite, or perhaps because of, his own displaced status. The boy had found purpose in defending others. "Very well," the wizard conceded. "But we start with defensive measures only." Harry grinned. "Deal." They moved to a clearing where practice would cause less damage. Gandalf demonstrated a simple shield spell, creating a shimmering barrier of energy before him. "The key is visualization," he explained. "See the protection taking form, feel its strength." Harry concentrated, his father's wand in one hand while his other hand extended outward as Gandalf had taught him for channeling Middle-earth magic. The dual approach had become his signature method. A faint barrier flickered into existence before him, more substantial than his previous attempts but still translucent. "Strike it," Harry said. "Let's test it." "Are you certain?" "Yes." Gandalf sent a mild burst of energy toward Harry's shield. The barrier flashed brightly upon impact but held. Harry's face broke into a triumphant smile, just before his shield shattered like glass. The force knocked him backward onto the grass. "Ow," he groaned. "You diverted your concentration to celebration before the test was complete," Gandalf noted, helping him up. "A common mistake." Harry dusted himself off. "Let me try again." For hours they practiced, Harry's shields growing stronger with each attempt. By sunset, he could maintain a barrier strong enough to deflect moderate attacks, though the effort left him drained. "Enough for today," Gandalf declared, noting Harry's fatigue. "One more try," Harry insisted, swaying slightly on his feet. "Tomorrow." "Magic requires respecting one's limits, Harry." The boy reluctantly nodded. As they walked back toward the elven halls, Harry asked, "Do you think I'll ever visit my birth world?" The question caught Gandalf off guard. "Why do you ask?" Harry shrugged. "Just wondering what it's like. If there are others like me there. People who could teach me about that side of my magic." "The passage between worlds is dangerous and unpredictable," Gandalf replied carefully. "The disturbances we've seen suggest the boundaries grow more unstable, not less. But it's possible." Gandalf considered his answer. "Possible, yes. Advisable? I cannot say. Your presence here already creates ripples. A crossing might cause greater disruption." Harry fell silent, processing this. After a moment, he asked, "Why did you bring me here, Gandalf?" "Really?" The wizard stopped walking. This question had been long in coming. I sensed you had a difficult destiny awaiting you there, he said truthfully. And a darkness attached to you that I didn't fully understand. I believed I could better protect you here, train you to face whatever lies ahead. The fragment in my scar, Harry said, touching his forehead. You never fully explained what it is. No, Gandalf admitted. Because I still don't fully understand it myself. But I believe it's connected to the one who killed your parents. A piece of him, somehow transferred to you when his killing curse rebounded. Harry's expression darkened. So I carry a part of my parents' murderer with me? It is contained, Gandalf assured him. The magic of Middle-earth has helped suppress it. In your birth world, it might have grown stronger, influenced you more directly. Could it be removed completely? Gandalf hesitated. Perhaps. But such matters of soul magic are complex and dangerous. When you're older, we'll explore the possibility. Harry nodded, clearly unsatisfied but accepting the answer for now. As they reached the steps leading up to the halls, he stopped again. Gandalf? Thank you. For taking me in. For teaching me. The Grey Wizard smiled warmly. You have brought as much to my life as I to yours, Harry Potter. Never doubt that. Again, 15-year-old Harry called, raising his shield just in time to deflect the arrow. Legolas, the elven prince visiting from Mirkwood, notched another arrow. Your reflexes improve, young wizard. Less talking, more shooting, Harry retorted with a grin. The next arrow flew faster than the human I could track. Harry didn't try to see it, he sensed it instead, feeling its path through the air. His shield materialized precisely in its trajectory, now requiring barely a thought to conjure. The arrow struck the magical barrier and clattered harmlessly to the ground. Harry immediately countered with a blast of energy from his wand, which Legolas dodged with preternatural grace. You still telegraph your counterattacks, the elf observed, firing 3 arrows in rapid succession. Harry deflected the first 2 but had to physically dodge the third, rolling across the practice ground. He came up with both his wand and his recently acquired sword drawn. Better? He asked, advancing on the archer. Legolas smoothly transitioned to his own blades. The two circled each other, a training session now transformed into a friendly duel. Much, the elf prince acknowledged. Though your footwork remains human. Their blades met with a clash that echoed through the training grounds. Harry had grown into a lean, athletic teenager. Years of training with elves, rangers, and Gandalf himself had honed his reflexes and strength. His fighting style blended conventional combat with unpredictable bursts of magic, sometimes channeled through his father's wand, sometimes through the sword Elrond had gifted him on his 14th birthday. From a balcony above, Gandalf watched with Elrond and Arwen. He improves rapidly, Elrond noted. Too rapidly, some might say. You fear his growing power? Gandalf asked. I fear what draws to power, Elrond replied. The rifts grow more frequent. Creatures from the boy's world slip through near wherever he travels. And there are whispers from the east. Sauron has no knowledge of Harry, Gandalf said firmly. Are you certain? The enemy's reach grows longer each year. If he learned of a wizard from beyond our world, with powers unfamiliar to us. Below, Harry successfully disarmed Legolas, a remarkable feat against an elf with thousands of years of combat experience. The prince laughed good-naturedly and clapped Harry on the shoulder. He has a good heart, Arwen said, speaking for the first time. Whatever power he develops, he will use it to protect, not dominate. Gandalf nodded in agreement, though concern shadowed his eyes. For now, yes. But there is something happening with Harry that I don't fully understand. What do you mean? Elrond asked. His connection to death grows stronger. Have you noticed? The birds that died in last month's storm, they responded to his presence. The ranger who nearly succumbed to poison, Harry sensed his approach to death's door before any of our healers. A sensitivity to the veil between worlds is not unheard of, Elrond said carefully. This is more than sensitivity, Gandalf insisted. It's as if death recognizes him. Acknowledges him. Their conversation halted as Harry joined them on the balcony, flushed with exertion and success. Did you see? He asked excitedly. I disarmed him. We saw, Gandalf confirmed, his concerns masked behind a proud smile. Though I suspect our friend was being generous. He was not, Legolas interjected, following Harry up the steps. The young wizard has developed a most unpredictable attack pattern. Harry beamed at the praise, then noticed Arwen. His confident demeanor faltered slightly, replaced by a more self-conscious smile. Lady Arwen. I didn't realize you were watching as well. Arwen smiled warmly. Your progress honors your teachers, Harry. A slight blush colored Harry's cheeks. His admiration for Elrond's daughter had been evident for years, though he tried to hide it. Harry, Gandalf said, Lord Elrond and I were discussing your continued training. There's a matter I believe we should investigate together. Another rift? Harry asked, immediately serious. No. Something else entirely. Gandalf exchanged glances with Elrond. Pack for a journey. We leave at dawn for the northern wilds. The mountains loomed harsh and unforgiving as Gandalf led Harry along a narrow path few had ever trod. After 5 days of hard travel, they had left behind the last outposts of civilization. You still haven't told me what we're looking for, Harry said, adjusting his pack. Because I'm not entirely certain myself, Gandalf admitted. A feeling, more than anything. A disturbance in the patterns of magic. Harry had learned to trust Gandalf's feelings. The old wizard's intuition had saved them from danger more times than he could count. Does it have to do with what you and Lord Elrond were discussing? About my connection to death? Gandalf stopped walking. You heard that? Bits and pieces, Harry admitted. Enhanced hearing, another weird ability that's developed lately. The wizard sighed. I should know better than to underestimate you by now. So it's true. Death recognizes me somehow. Gandalf resumed walking, forcing Harry to follow to continue the conversation. In your birth world, there were legends of 3 artifacts created long ago, the Deathly Hallows, they were called. A wand of immense power, a stone that could recall shades of the dead, and a cloak of perfect invisibility. What does that have to do with me? The legend held that one who united all 3 hallows would become the master of death. Harry frowned. But I don't have any of those objects. No, Gandalf agreed. And yet, death responds to you in ways I've never witnessed before. I believe there may be a connection, perhaps through your bloodline, perhaps through the specific circumstances of your survival that night in Godric's Hollow. They crested a ridge, and Harry gasped. Before them stretched a valley unlike any he'd seen in Middle-earth. The vegetation was different, plants he didn't recognize. In the center stood a perfect circle of standing stones, ancient and weathered. What is this place? He whispered. A thin spot between worlds, Gandalf explained. One of several I've located over the years. The boundaries between your birth world and Middle-earth are weakest here. Harry approached the stone circle cautiously. As he stepped inside, a strange sensation washed over him, like coming home after a long absence. Magic thrummed in the air, familiar yet different from both the wizarding energy he channeled through his wand and the more subtle power of Middle-earth. I feel. He started, then stopped, unsure how to describe it. What do you feel, Harry? Gandalf pressed. Like I'm being pulled in 2 directions. He touched one of the standing stones. Like something's trying to find me. As his fingers connected with the ancient rock, the lightning scar on his forehead flared with pain. Harry gasped, dropping to one knee. Harry! Gandalf rushed forward. Images flashed through Harry's mind, a tall, skeletal figure in flowing black robes, a golden ring burning with fire, a snake-faced man merging with a shadow, and most disturbingly, himself standing at a crossroads, holding three objects that glowed with otherworldly light. The vision passed, leaving Harry panting on the ground. "Something's coming," he whispered. "Looking for me." From both sides. Gandalf helped him up, his expression grave. "What did you see?" Harry described the vision, watching Gandalf's face grow increasingly troubled. "The fragment in your scar," the wizard said finally. "It reacts to the proximity between worlds. And if it reacts, then its owner might sense it too," Harry finished. "In my birth world and here. Sauron must not learn of your existence," Gandalf said firmly. "Not yet. Not until you're ready." "Ready for what?" Gandalf didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "The darkness that killed your parents, Voldemort, you called him, and the shadow growing in Mordor may be more similar than I first realized. Both seek dominance through fear. Both defied death through unnatural means. And I'm connected to both somehow," Harry said quietly. "Through this." He touched his scar. "Yes. But connections can be severed, Harry. Or transformed." Gandalf placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's why we train. That's why we prepare." Harry squared his shoulders. "Then let's prepare harder. Show me everything you know about death magic." Gandalf looked troubled. "Such knowledge is dangerous. More dangerous than being unprepared when whatever's looking for me finally finds me." The wizard couldn't argue with that logic. "Very well. But we do this carefully. Death magic can corrupt even the purest heart if approached with the wrong intention." Harry nodded solemnly. "I understand." As they left the stone circle, neither noticed the shadow that briefly fell across the valley, a winged shape passing high above, its rider turning its hooded face in their direction before continuing eastward, toward Mordor. "Concentrate on the boundary," Gandalf instructed. "Not life. Not death. The threshold between them." 16-year-old Harry stood in a glade near Rivendell, eyes closed, hands outstretched. Before him lay a small bird, its wing broken beyond repair. The creature's life force flickered weakly. "I can feel it," Harry murmured. "It's pain. It's fear. Do not simply take its life," Gandalf cautioned. "That is the easier path, but not our purpose. Find the moment of transition and hold it there." Harry took a deep breath. Over the past year, his abilities related to death had grown exponentially. What began as mere sensitivity had developed into something more profound, an ability to perceive, and increasingly to influence, the boundary between life and death. He reached out with his senses, finding the thread of life still connecting the bird to this world. Gently, he touched that thread, not severing it, but suspending it in a state between. The bird's labored breathing stopped, yet it did not die. It existed in perfect stasis, neither living nor dead. "Good," Gandalf said softly. "Now bring it back." This was the harder part. Harry had learned to suspend the moment of death, but reversing its approach entirely remained challenging. He focused intently, visualizing the bird's wing mending, its life force strengthening. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The bird remained motionless for several long moments. Then, suddenly, it gasped a tiny breath. Its wings straightened, bones knitting together visibly. With a startled chirp, it fluttered up and away into the trees. Harry opened his eyes, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. "I did it." "Indeed," Gandalf agreed, though his expression remained serious. "Your mastery grows impressive, Harry. And concerning." Harry's smile faltered. "Why concerning?" "I healed it." "You did more than heal it," Gandalf corrected. "You suspended its death and reversed it." "Such power." He shook his head. "In all my centuries, I've seen few with such command over the threshold." "Isn't that a good thing?" I can help people, save lives. All power can be turned to good or ill, Gandalf said carefully. But power over death itself, many would consider it unnatural. A defiance of the proper order. Harry frowned. So I shouldn't use it? Even to help? I didn't say that. Gandalf sighed heavily. I merely caution understanding the full weight of your developing abilities. Death is not meant to be mastered, Harry. It is meant to be accepted, when the time comes. A shout from the direction of Rivendell interrupted their discussion. Both turned to see an elven messenger running toward them. Master Gandalf. Harry, the messenger called. Riders approach from the west. Rangers, with wounded. They call for aid. Harry was already moving, Gandalf close behind him. They reached the main gates as the riders arrived, a group of 5 rangers, 3 of them supporting clearly injured companions. Trolls, explained their leader grimly. A new breed, smarter than the mountain variety. They ambushed our camp near Weathertop. The wounded were brought to the healing chambers. Harry followed, despite the hesitant looks from some of the elven healers. His abilities with death magic made some uncomfortable, even as they acknowledged its usefulness. One ranger lay particularly still, his breathing shallow. Harry approached his bedside while Elrond examined the wound, a deep gash across the chest, festering with some unknown poison. The troll's weapons were coated with something, Elrond said grimly. I've not seen its like before. Harry sensed the ranger's life force ebbing rapidly. Without asking permission, he placed his hands above the wound and closed his eyes. Harry, Elrond cautioned, we should discuss. There's no time, Harry interrupted. He's slipping away. I can feel it. He reached for the boundary between life and death, finding it already half-crossed. The ranger's spirit was being pulled toward darkness. Harry extended his will, halting the transition as he'd learned to do with smaller creatures. But a human's death was vastly more complex, the spirit fought both the pull of death and Harry's intervention. Harry felt himself drawn deeper into the threshold realm, a grey mist where boundaries blurred. The poison affecting the ranger had a magical component, he realized. It wasn't just killing the body, it was actively pulling the soul away. With determination, Harry pushed back against the magical poison. He used his wand in one hand to draw out the physical toxin while his other hand remained on the threshold, holding the ranger's spirit from fully departing. Return, he whispered, though in the threshold realm, the word carried power beyond its sound. Your time isn't finished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ranger gasped, his back arching. Color flooded back into his face as the wound began to close from the inside out. Harry staggered back, suddenly exhausted. Gandalf caught him before he could fall. That was. Elrond began, his voice uncharacteristically stunned. I've never witnessed such healing. Not healing, Harry corrected weakly. Recalling. His spirit was already crossing over. The room fell silent. The other rangers looked at Harry with expressions ranging from awe to fear. The boy commands death, one whispered. He saved Thoron's life, another countered. Harry tried to stand straight, shaking off his fatigue. I just did what anyone would do. No, Gandalf said quietly. What you did, few in any world could accomplish. You didn't just heal a wound or counteract poison. You called a spirit back from beyond the threshold. The implications hung heavy in the air. Harry felt uncomfortable under the stares of those present. He'd only wanted to help, not frighten people. There will be a council meeting to discuss this, Elrond announced. And other matters the Rangers have brought to our attention. For now, rest, Harry. You've expended tremendous energy. Harry nodded, allowing Gandalf to guide him from the healing chambers. Once they were alone in the corridor, he asked, did I do something wrong? Wrong? No, Gandalf assured him. But you've revealed the full extent of your abilities before many witnesses. Word will spread. I couldn't just let him die. I know. Gandalf's expression softened. Your heart remains pure, Harry. That gives me hope. But others may not see your power as benevolent. They may fear it, or worse, seek to use it. Harry considered this. You mean Sauron? Among others. The enemy constantly seeks new weapons in his arsenal. A wizard who commands the boundary of death would be a prize indeed. I'm not a weapon, Harry said firmly. No, Gandalf agreed. You're a young man with extraordinary gifts and a choice about how to use them. Remember that, when others try to decide your path for you. The council chamber filled with representatives from across Middle-earth, elves from Rivendell and Mirkwood, dwarves from the northern mountains, men from both Gondor and the northern kingdoms. Harry sat between Gandalf and Elrond, acutely aware of the glances directed his way. We gather to discuss growing threats, Elrond began formally. Our rangers report increased troll activity near Weathertop, creatures of unusual intelligence and coordination. Not just trolls, added a grim-faced ranger, the same one Harry had healed. Strange beasts unlike any native to Middle-earth. Creatures that seem to appear from nowhere. The rifts between worlds grow more numerous, Gandalf confirmed. And more unstable. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. And what causes these rifts? Asked a dwarf lord skeptically. We've heard rumors of magic beyond our understanding. All eyes turned to Harry. My presence in Middle-earth may contribute to the weakening boundaries, he admitted directly. I come from another realm, as many of you know. Then perhaps you should return there, suggested a man from Gondor. If your presence endangers our world, it's not that simple, Gandalf interrupted. The rifts appear whether Harry stays or goes. His passage between worlds was a symptom of a larger pattern, not its cause. This wasn't entirely true, Harry knew. Gandalf had previously suggested his presence did contribute to the weakening boundaries. But the wizard was protecting him from those who might demand his departure. What concerns me more, Elrond said, is evidence that these rifts are being exploited deliberately. The troll attack was coordinated, targeted specifically at rangers who patrol the boundaries. Someone doesn't want us monitoring the weak spots, the lead ranger concluded. Or someone seeks something coming through them, Gandalf added. Another uncomfortable silence fell as many again glanced at Harry. There's something else, the healed ranger spoke up. When I was wounded, I saw something in the shadow realm. A presence searching, reaching between worlds. It seemed to be looking for someone. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. What did this presence look like? I couldn't see clearly. But I felt its purpose. It seeks one who walks between life and death. One who commands both realms. The ranger looked directly at Harry. One like you. Whispers erupted around the chamber. Harry maintained his composure, though inside, his mind raced. The vision he'd experienced in the stone circle a year ago came rushing back, the skeletal figure, the snake-faced man, the shadow from Mordor. The enemy grows bolder, Elrond said gravely. If Sauron has indeed detected powers beyond our world, we face a new kind of threat. What would you have us do? Asked Legolas, speaking for the first time. Hide the boy away. He has proven himself a valuable ally. No one suggests hiding, the man from Gondor retorted. But containing the threat, Harry is not a threat, came a new voice. Arwen had entered the chamber unannounced. She moved to stand near Harry. I have watched him grow from child to young man. His heart remains true despite powers that might corrupt others. Harry shot her a grateful look, trying to ignore the flutter in his chest at her defense. The Lady Arwen speaks truly, Gandalf agreed. Harry's abilities, while unusual, have been used only to protect and heal. Thus far, the Gondorian muttered. Gandalf fixed him with a stern gaze. Judge by actions, not fears, Lord Boromir. Elrond raised a hand for silence. What we need is more information. If forces from both Harry's world and ours seek to exploit these rifts, we must understand their purpose. I volunteer to investigate, Harry said firmly, standing up. These rifts relate to me, to my presence here. I should be the one to find answers. Absolutely not, Gandalf objected. Placing you near these weak points might only accelerate whatever is happening. Or I might be the only one who can stabilize them, Harry countered. My magic works differently. I can sense these boundaries. The council erupted into debate. Some supported Harry's proposal while others vehemently opposed it. Through it all, Harry remained standing, his resolve strengthening. This was his responsibility, whether the council agreed or not. Finally, Elrond called for order. Enough. This requires further consideration. For now, we will increase patrols near known rift locations. Gandalf and I will consult on magical countermeasures. The council adjourned with nothing truly decided. As the representatives dispersed, Harry found himself approached by the ranger he had saved. Whatever the council decides, the man said quietly, you have the gratitude of the Dunedain. I would have passed beyond if not for your intervention. I'm glad I could help, Harry replied sincerely. They fear what they don't understand, the ranger added. But some of us recognize a valuable ally when we see one. He extended his arm in the traditional ranger greeting. Arathorn, son of Arader, at your service. Harry clasped his forearm. Harry Potter. I know who you are, Arathorn said with a slight smile. Few in Middle-earth haven't heard of the wizard child from another world. If you ever need the aid of the Rangers, you need only ask. As Arathorn departed, Arwen approached Harry. You handled yourself well in there. I spoke without thinking, Harry admitted. Gandalf's probably furious. He's protective, not angry, Arwen corrected. He sees in you great potential, but also great risk. Harry sighed. Sometimes I think it would be easier if I'd never come here. Do you regret it? Being brought to Middle-earth? Harry considered the question seriously. No, he said finally. Despite everything, this feels like home now. You all feel like family. Something flickered in Arwen's eyes, an emotion Harry couldn't quite identify. You have grown into a remarkable young man, Harry Potter. Whatever path lies before you, know that you do not walk it alone. She touched his arm briefly before following her father from the chamber, leaving Harry with a confused jumble of emotions. His admiration for Arwen had only grown over the years, evolving from childish awe to something deeper and more complex. Gandalf found him still standing there, lost in thought. The council may debate, but I know you, Harry. You've already decided to investigate these rifts, haven't you? Harry didn't bother denying it. I can't sit idle while others face dangers connected to me. Gandalf nodded, unsurprised. Then we go together. I won't try to stop you, that would be futile at this point. But neither will I let you face these mysteries alone. When do we leave? Dawn, Gandalf decided. But not for the rifts, not yet. First, there's someone you need to meet. Someone who might help us understand what's happening to you. Who? The Lady Galadriel of Lothlorien. If anyone in Middle-earth can see the path ahead clearly, it is she. The journey to Lothlorien took them through increasingly dangerous territory. Reports of orc bands and other, stranger creatures grew more frequent. Harry and Gandalf traveled with a small escort of elves, moving swiftly and quietly through the wilderness. On their fourth night, camped in a sheltered valley, Harry woke suddenly. Something had disturbed his sleep, a presence at the edges of his awareness. He sat up, reaching instinctively for his wand and sword. The camp remained quiet. The elven sentries showed no sign of alarm. Yet Harry couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He rose silently and moved to the perimeter of their camp. The night was clear, stars shining brightly overhead. Harry extended his senses, using the death magic sensitivity he'd developed to search for any living presence nearby. There, a flicker of something not quite alive, not quite dead. Moving through the trees at the edge of the valley. Without waking the others, Harry followed the sensation. He knew he should alert Gandalf, but curiosity drove him forward. This presence felt familiar somehow, like an echo of something he'd encountered before. He descended into a small ravine, following a dried streambed. The feeling grew stronger, a cold, hollow sensation that reminded him of the fragment contained in his scar. Harry's hand went to his forehead. The scar wasn't painful, exactly, but it pulsed with awareness. "I know you're there," he called softly. "Show yourself." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shape materialized from the shadows, humanoid but wrong somehow, its movements jerky and unnatural. It wore tattered black robes, and where its face should have been, there was only a pale, featureless mask. "Harry Potter," it hissed, its voice a horrifying rasp. "The boy who lived." Harry raised his wand defensively. "What are you? How do you know that name?" The creature tilted its head at an impossible angle. "We know all about you. The Master's bane. The child who should not have survived." "Your master," Harry repeated. "Voldemort?" A shudder ran through the creature. "He seeks you. Across worlds, across death itself. The fragment you carry calls to him." Harry's scar flared with sudden pain. He gritted his teeth against it. "What are you?" "You're not from Middle-earth." "I am a Dementor," the creature replied. "Or I was, before crossing the void between worlds. Now I am, something else. Something new." Harry remembered Gandalf's teachings about creatures from his birth world. Dementors, soul-suckers, feeders on happiness and hope. But this being seemed corrupted even from that terrible baseline, twisted by its passage between realms. "Why are you here?" Harry demanded, trying to ignore his mounting dread. "To find you. To mark you." The Dementor thing drifted closer. "Others follow. Greater servants. The Dark Lord rises again in your world, Harry Potter. And here, another darkness reaches for you." "Sauron," Harry whispered. The creature made a sound like broken glass grinding together, a laugh. "Two masters, one servant. The fragment you carry belongs to both now. Merged, melded across the void." Harry's blood ran cold. "That's not possible." "Dark magic finds dark magic," the Dementor rasped. "Souls sundered in similar ways recognize each other. Seek each other." The implications hit Harry like a physical blow. If Voldemort and Sauron had somehow connected through the fragment in his scar. "Enough talk," Harry said firmly, raising his wand higher. "Whatever you are, you don't belong here." The Dementor thing spread its arms. "Kill this form if you wish. I am merely a message, a herald. The true servants come soon." Harry didn't hesitate. Drawing on both his innate wizarding power and the magic of Middle-earth, he channeled energy through his wand. "Expecto Patronum," he shouted, using a spell he discovered in his father's old spellbooks and adapted through intuition. A brilliant stag erupted from his wand, formed of pure white light. At the same time, Harry reached for his death magic abilities, sensing the corrupted life force animating the Dementor thing. He grabbed that thread and severed it cleanly. The creature screamed, a sound like tearing metal, as the Patronus charged. Light met shadow in a blinding flash. When Harry's vision cleared, the Dementor thing was gone, leaving only a scorch mark on the ground. "Harry!" Gandalf's voice called from behind him. The wizard rushed down into the ravine, staff glowing with power. "What happened?" "We felt a surge of magic." Harry turned to him, his expression grave. "Voldemort and Sauron. They're connected somehow, reaching for each other across worlds. And I'm their conduit." Gandalf's face paled in the moonlight. Tell me everything." As Harry recounted his encounter, the elven escort secured the area, finding no trace of other creatures. By the time he finished his explanation, dawn was breaking over the eastern mountains. "This changes our purpose," Gandalf said grimly. "We must reach Galadriel with all haste. If what the creature said is true, we face a threat far greater than rifts between worlds." Harry nodded, his resolve hardening. "If I'm the conduit, then I'm also the key to stopping it. Whatever it takes, Gandalf. Whatever I have to do." The wizard studied him with newfound respect and concern. "You've grown up, Harry Potter. Perhaps too quickly." "I never had much choice in that," Harry replied with a wry smile. "But I do have a choice in what I do with the time I have. And I choose to fight." As they returned to camp, Harry felt a strange sensation in his hand. Looking down, he noticed a faint mark appearing on his palm, a triangle containing a circle, bisected by a line. It glowed briefly before fading back into his skin. The symbol of the Deathly Hallows. The mark of the Master of Death. Harry closed his fist, keeping this new development to himself for now. One crisis at a time. "Let's reach Lothlorien," he told Gandalf. "Then we can decide our next move." The golden woods of Lothlorien seemed to exist in a different world entirely, a realm where time moved differently and darkness could not easily penetrate. As Harry walked beneath the massive Mahlorn trees, he felt the weight of recent events lifting slightly from his shoulders. Elven guardians escorted them through the forest, their expressions curious as they regarded Harry. News of his abilities had clearly spread even to this isolated realm. Harry had grown used to such looks over the years, but they still made him uncomfortable. "They do not fear you," Gandalf said quietly, noticing his discomfort. "They are simply intrigued. Few humans have ever possessed talents like yours." "I'd trade them all to be normal sometimes," Harry admitted. Gandalf chuckled. "Normality is vastly overrated, my young friend." They were led to a clearing dominated by the largest tree Harry had ever seen. Built around and within its massive trunk was an elven city of extraordinary beauty, Kara's Galadhan, heart of Lothlorien. As they ascended the winding staircase to the upper levels, Harry felt a presence touch his mind, gentle but powerful, like water flowing around stone. "Welcome, Harry Potter," a voice spoke directly into his thoughts. "Long have I watched your journey from afar." At the top of the stairs stood two figures radiant with an inner light. Lord Celeborn and Lady Galadriel, rulers of Lothlorien, seemed more than merely elven. They emanated a power that reminded Harry of the most ancient magic he'd encountered. Gandalf bowed respectfully, and Harry followed suit. "Rise, friends," Celeborn said aloud. "You come in troubled times." "The shadow grows in the east," Gandalf confirmed. "And now it reaches across worlds." Galadriel's eyes fixed on Harry. Unlike the curious or wary looks he often received, her gaze was knowing, as if she saw not just who he was, but all he might become. "Harry Potter," she said, her voice musical yet resonant with power. "Child of prophecy in two worlds. Master of death by right of blood and choice." Harry startled at her words. "Master of death? That's just a legend." "All legends have roots in truth," Galadriel replied. "The hallows you seek were crafted in your world, yet their power transcends boundaries. They call to you across the void." "I'm not seeking anything," Harry objected. Galadriel smiled knowingly. "The seeking need not be conscious to be real. Show me your hand, child." Reluctantly, Harry extended his palm, revealing the mark that had appeared after his encounter with the Dementor thing. It was more visible now, like a silver scar upon his skin. "The mark of the Hallows," Gandalf murmured, seeing it for the first time. "When did this appear?" "After the creature in the ravine," Harry admitted. "I didn't want to worry you more than you already were." Galadriel touched the mark gently. As her fingers connected with it, Harry gasped. Visions flashed through his mind, a wand of elder wood, a stone of midnight black, a cloak shimmering like liquid starlight. All three objects hurtled through the void between worlds, drawn to the mark on his palm like iron to a lodestone. "They come to you," Galadriel said, withdrawing her hand. "Across time and space, the Hallows seek their true master." "But why me?" Harry asked, bewildered. "What makes me their master?" "You died, yet live," she answered simply. "The killing curse that rebounded upon your enemy should have taken your life. In that moment, you crossed the threshold and returned. Death recognized you then, marked you as one who walked its halls and departed freely." Harry looked to Gandalf for confirmation. The wizard nodded slowly. "I suspected something of the sort," Gandalf admitted. "Your connection to death has always been unusual. But I never imagined the Hallows themselves might manifest here." "This complicates matters," Celeborn observed. "If artifacts of such power cross between worlds, the boundaries weaken further," Gandalf finished grimly, "creating more opportunities for darker forces to connect." Galadriel turned away, moving to a pedestal where a silver basin stood. "Come, Harry Potter. The mirror of Galadriel may show us paths hidden even from my sight." Harry approached cautiously. "What will I see?" "Even the wisest cannot tell," she replied, filling the basin with water from a silver pitcher. "The mirror shows many things. Things that were, things that are, and some things that have not yet come to pass." Harry glanced at Gandalf, who nodded encouragingly. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward and gazed into the water. At first, he saw only his own reflection. Then the water rippled, and images began to form. A cupboard under stairs. A castle perched on a cliff. A chamber deep underground with a massive serpent. A tournament where dragons roared. A graveyard where a dark figure rose from a cauldron. A hall of prophecies. A tower where an old man fell. A hunt through wilderness for fragments of soul. A final battle in the ruins of the castle. The life he might have lived, Harry realized. The destiny that awaited him in his birth world. The images shifted again. Now he saw Middle-earth, the Shire, Rivendell, the plains of Rohan, the white city of Minas Tirith. He saw armies clashing before great gates, a fiery eye searching, and a small figure struggling up a mountain with a terrible burden. "The War of the Ring," Gandalf whispered beside him. What might come to pass here? The water churned more violently. The separate visions began to merge, Hogwarts Castle under siege by orcs. Death Eaters riding fell beasts over the Shire. Voldemort and Sauron, their powers and forms blending into something new and more terrible than either alone. At the center of this chaos stood Harry himself, holding three objects that glowed with power, the Hallows. Around him gathered representatives of both worlds, wizards and elves, men and hobbits, centaurs and dwarves, looking to him as their last hope. The vision ended abruptly, the water returning to stillness. Harry stepped back, shaken by what he'd seen. "Both worlds stand on the edge of a knife," Galadriel said softly. "Stray but a little, and both will fall to darkness." "I can't be responsible for two entire worlds," Harry protested. "I'm just one person." "No one is asking you to bear this burden alone," Gandalf assured him. "But you cannot deny your central role either." Harry paced the platform, trying to process everything. "So what do we do? How do we stop Voldemort and Sauron from connecting? How do I deal with these Hallows supposedly coming for me?" Galadriel exchanged glances with Celeborn and Gandalf. "There are three paths before you, Harry Potter. You may return to your birth world and face the destiny that awaits you there. You may remain in Middle-earth and confront the growing shadow of Sauron. Or you may stand at the crossroads between worlds and address both threats as they converge." "Some choice," Harry muttered. "Die in one world, die in another, or die in both." "Death is not the only possible outcome," Gandalf said firmly. "We face long odds, yes, but not hopeless ones. Harry took a deep breath, centering himself. You're right. Sorry. He looked at Galadriel. What do you recommend? I cannot choose your path, she replied. But I can offer guidance for each. If you return to your birth world, seek those who fought alongside your parents. If you remain here, the fellowship that forms to counter Sauron will need your unique abilities. And if you choose the crossroads, I'll need the Hallows, Harry finished. To have any chance at all. Galadriel nodded. The Hallows will find you regardless. The question is whether you will be prepared to wield them when they do. There's still time, Gandalf interjected. Sauron gathers his strength, but his full power is not yet restored. And from what the mirror showed, Voldemort's return in your world is still unfolding. Harry nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Then we use that time. I need to learn everything I can about both threats, about the Hallows, about controlling the rifts between worlds. A wise approach, Celeborn approved. Remain with us for a time. Lothlorien's power helps stabilize the boundaries between realms. Here, you can prepare without fear of accelerating the convergence. Harry looked to Gandalf, who nodded agreement. Then it's decided, Harry said with newfound determination. I'll train here, learn what I can. And when the time comes. He looked down at the mark on his palm. I'll be ready to face whatever comes through from either world. As night fell over Lothlorien, Harry stood alone on a high flat, gazing at the stars. They looked different here than in his birth world, brighter somehow, more deliberate in their patterns. Soft footsteps approached behind him. He turned to see Arwen, who had arrived with a separate envoy from Rivendell. Your thoughts are troubled, she observed. Harry smiled faintly. That obvious, huh? To those who know you well. She joined him at the railing. My grandmother believes you have an extraordinary destiny. That's one way to put it, Harry said wryly. Extraordinarily dangerous is another. Arwen studied him with those ancient eyes that had always seen too much. You've grown much since the boy who chased butterflies in Rivendell's gardens. Had to happen eventually. Yes, but not like this, carrying the weight of two worlds before you fully lived in either. Harry hadn't considered it that way before. I've had a good life here, he said honestly. Different than it would have been, but good. I had Gandalf, Elrond, you. I wasn't alone. And yet part of you has always wondered about the world you left behind, Arwen said perceptively. Wouldn't you? If you knew there was a whole other life you might have lived. She nodded thoughtfully. I understand more than you might think. All Eldar face choices that determine the entire course of our existence. To remain in Middle-earth or sail to the undying lands. To embrace mortality or hold to immortality. Harry turned to face her fully. Have you decided? About mortality, I mean. Gandalf mentioned once that elves can choose to become mortal for certain reasons. Something flickered in Arwen's expression, a vulnerability rarely seen in the Eldar. My path remains uncertain. But I begin to understand why one might make such a choice. They stood in silence for a moment, the unspoken hanging between them. Harry had never declared his feelings for her explicitly, nor she for him. Yet something had grown between them over the years, a connection that transcended simple friendship. Whatever you decide about the worlds, Arwen said finally, know that you have made this one better by your presence in it. You have touched many lives, Harry Potter. Mine among them. She leaned forward and kissed his cheek gently before departing, leaving Harry with a complex mixture of emotions. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new training, new preparations for the threats ahead. But tonight, under the stars of Middle-earth, he allowed himself to feel simply human, a young man with hopes and fears and dreams that had nothing to do with prophecies or destinies. For just one moment, he wasn't the boy who lived or the master of death. He was just Harry. And that, he decided, was enough for now. Chapter 2, shadows across realms. I'd spent 6 months in Lothlorien, and honestly, time moves weird in those golden woods. Could have been 6 weeks or 6 years for all I knew. Every day blended into training, studying, and more training. Lady Galadriel taught me to focus my death magic with precision. Lord Celeborn showed me ancient battle tactics. And Gandalf? He pushed me harder than ever, like he knew something big was coming. The Hallows mark on my palm grew more defined each day. Sometimes it burned when I practiced death magic, not painful exactly, just aware. Like it was waking up. Again, Gandalf called from across the training field. This time without the wand. I wiped sweat from my forehead. You know that makes it twice as hard. And that's precisely why you must master it, he replied, summoning 3 glowing orbs of energy. Enemies won't politely wait while you draw your wand. He hurled the orbs at me simultaneously. I dropped into a defensive stance, channeling Middle-earth magic through my body rather than my father's wand. A shimmering barrier materialized around me, not as strong as my wand-cast shields, but solid enough to deflect Gandalf's attack. Better, the wizard approved. Now counter. I pushed both hands forward, converting the defensive energy to offensive. The barrier collapsed inward, then burst outward in a controlled shockwave that sent Gandalf skidding back several feet. Ha! I grinned. Wasn't expecting that, were you? Gandalf brushed dust from his robes with dignified indignation. Acceptable progress. Though your technique remains unorthodox. Unorthodox works for me. Indeed. His expression turned serious. Which is why I believe you're ready. I straightened. Ready for what? The Council has been monitoring disturbances along the borders. 3 new rifts have opened near the Misty Mountains. Creatures from your birth world are crossing through, and something, or someone, appears to be directing them. My heart quickened. You're sending me to investigate. Us, Gandalf corrected. I'll accompany you to the mountains. From there, you may need to continue alone. My presence has become conspicuous to the enemy's forces. I nodded, understanding the implication. Sauron would be watching for Gandalf, but I might slip in unnoticed. When do we leave? Dawn. Pack light but prepare thoroughly. We don't know what awaits us. We departed Lothlorien as the first golden rays touched the Mollorn trees. Galadriel gifted me a cloak of extraordinary lightness that seemed to blend with any environment. To Gandalf, she gave a crystal phial containing what looked like pure starlight. For the darkest moments, she told him cryptically. Then, turning to me, the paths diverge before you, Harry Potter. Trust your instincts when the moment comes to choose. Cryptic elvish wisdom, exactly what you want before a dangerous mission. The journey north took us through increasingly wild territory. We avoided the main roads, traveling instead through forests and hidden valleys. Gandalf pushed a relentless pace, stopping only when absolutely necessary. On our 4th day, we encountered the first sign of trouble, a small village on the edge of a forest, completely abandoned. Doors stood open, meals remained half-eaten on tables. No signs of violence, just absence. They didn't leave willingly, I said, examining footprints that simply ended in the village square. It's like they vanished mid-step. Gandalf knelt beside me. Magic. Not of Middle-earth. Apparition. But that would require wizards from my world. Or something that mimics such abilities. Gandalf's expression darkened. We must hurry. 2 days later, we reached the foothills of the Misty Mountains. The air felt different here, charged, unstable. I could sense the weakness in reality, like fabric stretched too thin. There, I pointed toward a narrow pass between 2 jagged peaks. The boundary feels thinnest there. Gandalf nodded. I sense it too. But we're not alone. He was right. As we approached the pass, shadows moved among the rocks, too fluidly for mere mountain predators. Scouts, Gandalf murmured. Not orcs. Something else. I drew both my sword and wand, scanning the terrain. Should we avoid them? No. We need information. But caution, Harry. These may not be creatures you recognize from either world. We continued up the rocky path, making no attempt to hide our approach. Better to confront whatever watched us on our terms. The attack came suddenly, dark shapes leaping from the rocks above. I raised my shield charm instinctively, deflecting the first attacker. It bounced off the magical barrier with an inhuman shriek. Dementors! I shouted, recognizing the tattered black cloaks and skeletal appearance. But they're wrong somehow. These weren't pure Dementors. They moved with predatory physicality normal Dementors lacked, and carried crude weapons. Their faces, usually hidden in shadow, displayed grotesque masks that resembled both Dementor and Orc. Corrupted by passage between worlds, Gandalf called, his staff blazing with white light that forced several creatures back. Or deliberately transformed. I cast my Patronus, the silver stag charging through 3 of the hybrid creatures, sending them fleeing with unearthly cries. But more appeared from the rocks, at least a dozen now. There are too many. I shouted. Gandalf slammed his staff into the ground, creating a shockwave that bought us seconds. The pass. Make for the pass. We sprinted toward the narrow gap between mountains, hybrid Dementors in pursuit. As we entered the pass, I felt the boundary between worlds like an electric current against my skin. The air shimmered with barely visible distortions. The rift is active, Gandalf said grimly. Recently used. Something has been bringing these creatures through deliberately. A haunting howl echoed through the pass. Not Dementor. Something else. Werewolf, I breathed. Gandalf, that's a werewolf howl. Can you be certain? Trust me, that sound was covered extensively in my magical creature studies. I tightened my grip on both weapons. But it's not the full moon. They shouldn't be transformed. The rules of your world may not apply completely here, Gandalf reminded me. Be prepared for anything. We continued through the winding pass, the howls growing closer. The hybrid Dementors had stopped pursuing us directly, instead shadowing our movements from the heights above. They're hurting us, I realized. Driving us toward something. Or someone, Gandalf agreed. The question is, who controls creatures from your world? Sauron has many servants, but knowledge of Dementors and werewolves. Someone from my world working with Sauron. The possibility sent chills through me. But who? My question was cut short as we rounded a bend and found our path blocked. Not by werewolves or Dementors, but by elves, a hunting party of at least 8, bows drawn and aimed directly at us. Their leader stepped forward, tall even by elven standards, with long blonde hair and piercing blue eyes. He wore the distinctive gear of Mirkwood rather than Lothlorien or Rivendell. Mithrandir, he addressed Gandalf with cautious respect. You venture far from safe roads. Legolas Greenleaf, Gandalf lowered his staff slightly. Your presence here is unexpected. As is yours. Legolas's gaze shifted to me, eyes narrowing. And you bring the Death Wizard. Word of your approach preceded you. I bristled at his tone. The Death Wizard has a name. Indeed. Harry Potter. Tales of your exploits grow with each telling. His expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. Some say you command death itself. Others claim you walk between worlds, bringing danger in your wake. And which tale do you believe? I challenged. A hint of a smile touched his lips. I reserve judgment until evidence presents itself. Currently, the evidence suggests you've drawn unusual predators to these mountains. As if on cue, another howl echoed through the pass, closer now. The creatures pursue us, yes, Gandalf acknowledged. But they were already here, coming through rifts between worlds. Legolas signaled his companions to lower their bows. "We've been tracking strange beasts for a fortnight. Creatures unlike any native to Middle-earth. They take villagers, leaving no trace." "The empty village," I murmured. "What do they want with them?" "That," said Legolas, "is what we intend to discover. A trail leads higher into the mountains, to the abandoned dwarf mines of Khazad-dûm." Gandalf and I exchanged concerned glances. Moria, a place of ancient darkness even before these new threats. "You plan to follow them inside?" Gandalf asked incredulously. "We've scouted the outer halls only. Whatever controls these creatures has established a stronghold in the deeper chambers." Legolas regarded us with calculating eyes. "Your arrival presents an opportunity, Mithrandir. The Death Wizard's knowledge of these beasts could prove valuable." "I have a name," I repeated irritably. "It's Harry." "So you've mentioned." Legolas turned back to Gandalf. "Will you aid us? Or shall our paths diverge here?" Before Gandalf could answer, the howling intensified, multiple voices now, and alarmingly close. "Decision postponed," Legolas announced, signaling his companions. "Defensive positions." The elves moved with fluid grace, forming a semicircle facing down the pass. I positioned myself beside them, wand and sword ready. Gandalf took station at the center, staff glowing brighter. They came around a bend in a nightmarish pack, werewolves unlike any I'd studied. Their forms were twisted, caught between human and wolf, with elongated limbs and oversized jaws. But most disturbing were their eyes, glowing red with the same malevolence I'd glimpsed in visions of Sauron's eye. "These aren't normal werewolves," I shouted over the growling. "Something's corrupted them." "Your expertise is noted," Legolas replied dryly, loosing his first arrow. It struck a leading werewolf in the shoulder, staggering but not stopping it. The pack charged. I counted at least 12 of the monstrosities, larger than natural wolves and moving with terrifying coordination. "Aim for the heart or brain," I called to the elves. "Normal wounds won't stop them." Gandalf struck first, sending a blinding shaft of light from his staff that drove back the center of the pack. The elves fired a coordinated volley, their arrows finding vulnerable points with uncanny accuracy. 3 werewolves fell immediately. I cast a slicing hex at one leaping directly for me. The spell caught it mid-air, opening a deep gash across its chest. The creature crashed to the ground but immediately began to heal before my eyes. "They regenerate," I warned, switching tactics. "Incendio." Flames erupted from my wand, engulfing the wounded werewolf. This proved more effective, the creature shrieked and didn't rise again. The battle descended into chaos. Elven arrows and blades flashed alongside Gandalf's magic and my own hybrid spellcasting. I found myself instinctively coordinating with Legolas, his arrows creating openings that my magic exploited. A particularly massive werewolf broke through our line, heading straight for Gandalf. The wizard was occupied with 3 others, his back turned to the new threat. Without thinking, I operat, a skill I'd only recently mastered in Middle-earth. The displacement magic felt different here, requiring more concentration, but it worked. I reappeared between Gandalf and the charging werewolf, my sword raised. "Stupefy!" I shouted, channeling the stunning spell not through my wand but through my sword, a technique Galadriel had taught me to blend my magical traditions. The enhanced spell struck the werewolf with enough force to send it flying backward into a rock wall. I followed immediately with a binding curse that wrapped magical chains around the stunned creature. "That one's alive," I called to Legolas. "We might need answers." The elf acknowledged with a quick nod, already firing at another target. The skirmish lasted only minutes more before the remaining werewolves retreated, carrying their wounded with them. As the dust settled, I surveyed our group. 2 elves had sustained minor injuries. Everyone else appeared unharmed, though winded. Legolas approached my captive werewolf with an appraising eye. Impressive magic. I've not seen its like before. Combination of techniques, I explained, still catching my breath. My world's magic channeled through Middle-earth methods. And you displaced yourself through space to protect Mithrandir. He raised an eyebrow. A rare skill. Apparition. Standard transportation where I come from, though not easy here. Fascinating. Legolas studied me with new interest. Perhaps the tales understate your abilities. The tales rarely mention I'm just trying to figure things out as I go, I admitted. A hint of humor flickered across his face. That, at least, we have in common. Gandalf joined us, examining my werewolf prisoner. This creature has been altered by dark magic. The transformation is not natural to its kind. It feels like the same corruption affecting the Dementors, I agreed. Like something's binding Sauron's essence to creatures from my world. Can you extract information from it? Legolas asked. I hesitated. I can try. But werewolves aren't known for conversation, especially corrupted ones. Perhaps not conversation, Gandalf said thoughtfully. But you've developed skills with the boundary between life and death. You might access its memories directly. Legolas looked between us with sudden wariness. Death magic? Not dark magic, I clarified quickly. Just, specialized. I can sense life forces, sometimes influence them. Or read them, Gandalf prompted. I'd never attempted to read a creature's memories through my death magic before, but the theory made sense. If I could perceive the threshold of death, I might glimpse what lay in a mind approaching that boundary. I'll need to weaken it first, I said. Bring it closer to death without killing it outright. Legolas's expression hardened. You propose torture? No, I replied firmly. I can suppress its life force painlessly. It's like induced hibernation, but deeper. The elf studied me for a long moment before nodding once. Proceed. But I will end its suffering if your methods prove cruel. Fair enough. I approached the bound werewolf, which snarled and thrashed against its magical restraints. Focusing my awareness, I reached for its life force, a chaotic, fractured energy unlike the clean signatures of natural beings. Something's wrong with its soul, I murmured. It's been spliced somehow. Carefully, I extended my influence over its life energy, gently suppressing its strength. The creature's struggles weakened. Its eyes, those unnatural red orbs, began to dim. Stay with me, I whispered, maintaining the careful balance. Too far toward death and information would be lost, not far enough and its mind would remain closed. I found the threshold and held the creature there, suspended between realms. Then I reached deeper, into its fractured consciousness. Images flooded my mind, dark chambers deep in the mountain, humans and other creatures bound in circles of strange runes, a hooded figure performing rituals involving blood and fire, and most disturbingly, a shadowy presence overseeing everything, not physically present but watching through some magical connection. I pushed deeper, seeking the identity of the hooded figure. For a moment, I glimpsed a pale, gaunt face beneath the hood, vaguely familiar yet transformed by darkness. Then suddenly, awareness shifted. The creature's consciousness was no longer alone. Something else looked back through those eyes, something ancient and malevolent. The burning eye of Sauron himself, watching me through this connection. I jerked back physically, breaking contact. The werewolf convulsed once, then went still, dead, its life force extinguished not by me but by the dark presence that had reached through it. What happened? Gandalf demanded, steadying me as I staggered. Sauron, I gasped. He was watching through it. Killed it when he realized I was seeing too much. Legolas looked from the dead werewolf to me with new alarm. The enemy himself? You're certain? I nodded grimly. I'd recognize that presence anywhere. He's connected to these creatures somehow, using them as extensions of his will. What else did you see? Gandalf pressed. A base in the deep mines. Prisoners, the missing villagers, I think. And someone directing it all, a wizard or sorcerer of some kind. I frowned, trying to place the glimpsed face. There was something familiar about him, but twisted. Legolas conferred briefly with his companions before turning back to us. This confirms our worst fears. We must reach their stronghold and free the captives before whatever ritual they're planning is completed. Ritual? Gandalf inquired. The creatures take specific people, those with unique skills or bloodlines. We believe they're being sacrificed in some dark ceremony. A cold certainty settled over me. They're creating anchors, I said. Stable connections between worlds. Using blood magic to bind the rifts permanently open. Gandalf's expression darkened. If Sauron establishes permanent pathways to your world, Harry. He could bring through worse than werewolves and dementors, I finished. Much worse. Legolas studied us both. Then our courses align. Will you join our mission into the depths? I looked to Gandalf, who nodded slightly. I'm in, I told Legolas. But we'll need a plan better than charge in and hope for the best. The hint of a smile returned to the elf's face. Indeed. And what would you suggest, Death Wizard? I sighed. Clearly, I wasn't going to shake that nickname anytime soon. First, I need to scout the layout. Second, we identify exactly what ritual they're performing. Third. I grinned darkly. We show them why bringing creatures from my world wasn't their smartest move. We established a temporary camp in a defensible cave higher up the mountainside. While the elves prepared equipment, Gandalf pulled me aside for a private conversation. I cannot accompany you into Moria, he said without preamble. I stared at him. What? Why not? 2 reasons. First, my presence would immediately alert Sauron's forces. The enemy watches for me specifically. He hesitated before continuing. Second, I have received urgent word from Radagast. The White Council must convene immediately. Unusual creatures have been sighted near Dol Guldur as well. So you're leaving me to handle this alone? Not alone. Legolas and his hunters are formidable allies. They don't trust me, I pointed out. Legolas basically thinks I'm one step away from becoming a Dark Lord myself. Gandalf's eyes twinkled slightly. He is cautious, yes. But he also witnessed your power and control today. You've earned a measure of respect. I wasn't convinced. When will you go? At first light. The path you follow leads into darkness, Harry. Be vigilant not just against external threats, but internal ones as well. Meaning? The mark on your palm grows stronger as you near the rifts. The Hallows call to you more insistently. Such power can cloud judgment, tempt even the wisest toward overconfidence. I flexed my hand, the Hallows symbol now permanently visible on my skin. I can handle it, Gandalf. I'm not some power-hungry dark wizard. Neither were many who eventually fell to darkness, he replied gently. It is rarely a single choice that corrupts, but 100 small compromises. I wanted to argue further, but something in his expression stopped me. Gandalf wasn't doubting me, he was genuinely worried. After 16 years as my mentor and surrogate father, he knew my strengths and weaknesses better than anyone. I'll be careful, I promised. No unnecessary risks. Good. He clasped my shoulder warmly. You've grown into a remarkable young man, Harry Potter. Your parents would be proud of the wizard you've become. Coming from Gandalf, that meant everything. Morning brought Gandalf's departure and final planning with Legolas's group. The elven prince had warmed slightly toward me, though suspicion lingered in his eyes whenever I demonstrated my more unusual abilities. The eastern entrance to Moria lies 2 hours' journey from here, Legolas explained, indicating a point on his rough map. My scouts report minimal guard presence, the creatures seem concentrated in the deeper halls. They're not expecting an attack, one of the other elves added. They believe their presence remains undetected. I studied the map, remembering the images from the werewolf's mind. There's a large chamber here, I pointed to a section of the mine. That's where they're holding the prisoners. And some kind of ritual space deeper still, maybe near an underground lake. Legolas nodded. The chamber of Mazarbel, and beyond it, the underground sea of Kelidzarum. Ancient places with powerful resonances. Perfect for blood magic, I murmured. The older the site, the stronger the foundation for ritual work. The elves exchanged uneasy glances at my casual knowledge of such matters. We should split into two groups, I suggested. One to free the prisoners, one to disrupt the ritual. Agreed, Legolas said. I'll lead the rescue party. You seem most qualified to confront whatever magic they're working. I raised an eyebrow. You trust me to handle that alone? Not entirely, he admitted with surprising candor. Ferder will accompany you, my most skilled scout and a warrior of exceptional ability. A dark-haired elf nodded at me from across the fire. Great. A babysitter. Fine, I conceded. But if we're separating, we need a way to communicate. I removed my father's wand and transfigured two ordinary pebbles into simple communication stones, a trick I'd developed by combining wizarding transfiguration with elven enchantment techniques. These will warm when activated, I explained, handing one to Legolas. Speak to it, and the other will relay your voice. Range is limited, but should work within the mines. Legolas examined the stone with reluctant admiration. Useful magic. I have my moments. We finished preparations and set out for Moria's eastern entrance, a modest doorway carved into the mountainside, partially concealed by overgrowth. No guard stood watch, though evidence of recent passage marked the ground. They rely on secrecy, not strength, Legolas observed. Overconfidence may be their weakness. Let's hope so, I muttered, drawing my wand. The entrance led to a narrow tunnel that descended sharply into the mountain. Ferder took point, moving with the supernatural silence of elven scouts. I followed, casting a subtle lumos that provided just enough light without announcing our presence. Behind us came Legolas and his remaining 5 hunters, weapons ready. The tunnel opened into a vast hall supported by massive stone pillars, the legendary architecture of the dwarves on full display. Under different circumstances, I might have stopped to admire it. Now, I focused only on potential threats. We encountered our first guard at a junction where the passage split 3 ways, a hybrid Dementor slumped against a wall, apparently sleeping or in some dormant state. Ferder dispatched it with a single knife throw before it could alert others. Left passage leads toward the chamber of Mazarbel, Legolas whispered, consulting his mental map. Right descends deeper. This is where we separate, I confirmed. Remember, free the prisoners first, then rendezvous with us if possible. If you hear fighting. We will come, Legolas assured me. Unless our own task proves more challenging than anticipated. We clasped forearms briefly, a warrior's gesture of respect I hadn't expected. Good hunting, Death Wizard, he said. You too, Elf Prince. With a nod to Ferder, I turned down the right-hand passage, descending further into Moria's depths. The air grew colder as we progressed, with an odd metallic taste that reminded me of blood. Ferder moved like a shadow ahead of me, occasionally raising a hand to signal caution. We passed more guards, mostly corrupted Dementors, with occasional werewolves stationed at key junctions. They're organized, I whispered during a brief halt. Too organized for mindless creatures. Ferder nodded. Something controls them directly. A will imposed upon their own. Another disturbing thought struck me. Or someone's bound fragments of the same consciousness to each of them. The elf gave me a sharp look. Soul-splitting. Such magic is forbidden in all realms. Yeah, well, Sauron and Voldemort never got that memo. We pressed on, eventually reaching a massive staircase that plunged into darkness. Far below, an eerie blue-green light pulsed rhythmically. The ritual has begun, Fërdr observed grimly. I checked my mental clock, barely an hour since we'd entered the mines. They're moving faster than we anticipated. We need to hurry. Rather than descending the exposed staircase, I grabbed Fërdr's arm. Do you trust me? His expression suggested otherwise, but he nodded once. Hold tight, I instructed, then apparat, taking us both directly to the bottom of the stairwell. We reappeared in shadows beside the last step. Fërdr stumbled slightly, looking disoriented and faintly nauseous. Warning, he hissed, would have been appreciated. Sorry. Faster than walking. The elf took a moment to regain his composure, then focused on our surroundings. We'd emerged near the shores of an underground lake, Keledzarum, the Mirror of dwarf legend. Its black waters reflected no light save the pulsing blue-green glow emanating from an island at its center. On that island stood a stone platform where the ritual was underway. Hooded figures moved in complex patterns around a central altar. Upon the altar lay a body, a young woman apparently unconscious. Around her, strange symbols had been drawn in what was unmistakably blood. 7 runes, 7 figures, Fërdr counted. And a leader. The leader stood apart from the others, taller, his robes more elaborate. Even at this distance, I sensed familiar magic from him. Wizarding magic, twisted and corrupted. We need closer access, I whispered. Can you swim silently? Fërdr gave me a look that clearly questioned my intelligence. I am Eldar. Right. Stupid question. I cast a disillusionment charm on both of us, rendering us not invisible but extremely difficult to notice. Stay close to me. We slipped into the icy waters of Keledzarum. The cold hit like a physical blow, but I pushed through it, swimming silently toward the ritual island. Fërdr moved beside me with predictable elvish grace, barely disturbing the water's surface. As we drew closer, the ritual's nature became clearer. The 7 hooded figures were channeling energy into the runes around the unconscious woman. With each pulse, the boundary between worlds thinned visibly, actual tears in reality flickering above the altar. And through those tears, I glimpsed another world. My world. Specifically, what looked like the Department of Mysteries in the Ministry of Magic, a location I knew only from Gandalf's memory extraction of my original timeline. The leader raised his hands, speaking in a language that hurt my ears, black speech, interspersed with corrupted Latin incantations. With mounting horror, I realized he was using the woman as both power source and anchor, binding her life force to the rift to stabilize it permanently. We need to disrupt the ritual without killing her, I whispered to Fërdr. When I give the signal, target the outer circle of casters. I'll handle the leader and the altar. The elf nodded, readying his bow despite being chest-deep in water. I took a deep breath, preparing multiple spells in sequence. This would require precise timing. Now! I shouted, dropping the disillusionment charm. Fërdr's first arrow flew before I'd finished speaking, taking one of the hooded figures through the throat. His second and third followed instantaneously, dropping 2 more. I burst from the water, casting a powerful dispelling charm directly at the ritual circle. The runes flared violently, their power pattern disrupting. Then I sent a concussive blast toward the remaining ritual participants, scattering them like bowling pins. Only the leader remained standing, turning slowly to face me. His hood fell back, revealing the face I'd glimpsed in the werewolf's memories, gaunt, pale, with sunken eyes that burned with fanatical intensity. Harry Potter, he rasped, his voice carrying an echo of another's. The Master's Bane. Right on schedule. I faltered momentarily, recognition striking like lightning. Barty Crouch Jr. The wizard smiled, a twisted expression on his ravaged face. What remains of him? The vessel serves its purpose. This was wrong. Barty Crouch Jr. should have been in Azkaban in my timeline, not performing blood rituals in Middle-earth. How are you here? I demanded, keeping my wand trained on him while maintaining awareness of the other threats. Ferder was systematically eliminating the remaining cultists with terrifying efficiency. The same way you are, Crouch replied. The boundary weakened 16 years ago when the killing curse rebounded. Some of us slipped through the cracks that formed. Some of us. I repeated. There are more wizards from my world here. A few. Scattered. Serving. His gaze drifted to the altar where the woman still lay unconscious. But soon the path will open fully. The Dark Lord will find his way to new conquests. Which Dark Lord? I challenged. Voldemort or Sauron? Crouch's laugh chilled me more than the lake water. Is there a difference anymore? Two shadows merging into one greater darkness. I'd heard enough. Raising my wand, I cast a binding spell, but Crouch deflected it with surprising strength, countering with a killing curse that I barely dodged. The boy who lived becomes the man who dies, he snarled, casting again. I blocked his second attack with a shield charm, then immediately transitioned to offense, a barrage of stunners and concussive spells designed to overwhelm his defenses. Crouch was powerful but unstable, his magic fluctuating wildly. One moment he deflected my strongest attacks, the next, he struggled with basic shields. It felt like fighting two different wizards alternating control of the same body. Meanwhile, the ritual altar continued pulsing, the rift still partially open above the unconscious woman. Through it, I glimpsed shadowy figures on the other side, Death Eaters, perhaps, or worse. I needed to end this quickly. Switching tactics, I apparat directly behind Crouch, simultaneously casting a disarming spell with my wand and striking with my sword. The combination worked, his wand flew from his hand as my sword caught him across the shoulder. Crouch staggered but didn't fall. Instead, he began laughing, a high, cold sound that wasn't his own. Too late, Potter, he gasped as black blood seeped from his wound. The anchor is set. The way opens. I glanced at the altar. The rift was expanding, edges stabilizing. Whatever we'd interrupted hadn't been stopped completely. Making a split-second decision, I stunned Crouch with a point-blank spell to the head, then rushed to the altar. The woman's life force was fading rapidly, her energy being consumed to power the expanding rift. Ferder! I shouted. Cover me! The elf appeared instantly at my side, arrows ready as corrupted dementors began streaming into the chamber from multiple entrances, alerted by the disrupted ritual. I placed my hands on either side of the woman's head, searching for the magical bindings connecting her to the rift. They were complex, 7 separate threads woven through her life force, each tied to one of the blood runes. There wasn't time to untangle them properly. I had to sever them all simultaneously while preserving her life essence. This required death magic at a level I'd never attempted before. Drawing a deep breath, I fully opened my awareness to the threshold realm, sensing both her approach toward death and the unnatural bindings accelerating it. The Hallows mark on my palm flared to brilliant life, burning with golden fire that spread up my arm. Power surged through me, not just my own, but something ancient and vast, responding to my need. Hold on, I whispered to the unconscious woman. I'm bringing you back. I reached for all 7 bindings at once, grasping them with my enhanced perception. Then, focusing my will through the Hallows mark, I severed them clean, not redirecting the energy, but actually absorbing it into myself. Pain exploded through my body as the ritual's power transferred to me. The rift lurched, its edges destabilizing. On the other side, I briefly locked eyes with a pale, snake-faced figure watching with fury. Voldemort. Somehow already resurrected in my original timeline. With the last of my strength, I pushed back against the rift, forcing it closed like sealing a wound. The backlash sent me flying backward, crashing into the cold waters of Keledzarim. Darkness took me. I awoke to chaos. Ferder was dragging me through water, arrows still occasionally leaving his bow one-handed to ward off pursuers. My body felt simultaneously burned and frozen, every nerve screaming in protest. The woman? I gasped. Alive, Ferder replied tersely. I carry you both. Sure enough, the unconscious ritual victim floated beside us, secured to Ferder by a length of elven rope. The elf's strength and coordination were remarkable, managing two human-sized burdens while still defending against attacks. Legolas? I managed. Communication stone shattered during your magic. Status unknown. That wasn't good. I tried to summon enough energy to help, but my reserves were completely drained. The Hallows mark on my palm had faded to a dull outline, dormant once more. We reached the shore where Dementors awaited. Ferder propped me against a rock, positioning himself protectively before both me and the woman. Can you fight? He asked, notching his last arrow. I raised my wand with trembling fingers. Not effectively. Then we die with honor. The elf's calm acceptance was almost comical. Let's postpone that, I suggested, trying to think clearly despite my exhaustion. I might have one last trick. The Dementors advanced, at least a dozen converging on our position. Behind them, I spotted more werewolves descending the staircase. Summoning my remaining strength, I focused not on offensive magic but on the very fabric of space around us. Apparition normally transported only myself, or at most one additional person. But with the boundaries already weakened here. Hold tight to me and the woman, I instructed Ferder. This will feel extremely unpleasant. The elf gripped my shoulder. What magic? I didn't wait for him to finish. Concentrating with every remaining ounce of willpower, I visualized our destination, the entrance to Moria where we'd first entered. Then I twisted reality itself, creating not just displacement but a temporary tunnel through space. The sensation was beyond disorientation, like being stretched, compressed, and twisted simultaneously. Darkness engulfed us, then light flared blindingly bright. We crashed onto hard stone, outside the eastern entrance of Moria, exactly where I'd aimed. The effort cost me the last vestiges of consciousness. As blackness claimed me again, I heard new voices and caught a glimpse of familiar blonde hair. Legolas had made it out too. Recovery took days. We'd established camp in a hidden valley several miles from Moria, well concealed from potential pursuers. Legolas's rescue mission had succeeded, though not without casualties, one elf dead, another seriously wounded. The prisoners, 17 in total, were mostly in good condition physically, though mentally traumatized by their captivity. The woman from the altar remained unconscious, her life force dangerously depleted by the ritual. I spent most of the first 2 days in a similar state, drifting in and out of awareness, my magical reserves rebuilding gradually. When I finally regained full consciousness, Legolas was seated beside my bedroll. The Death Wizard returns to the living, he observed dryly. I managed a weak smile. Miss me? Hardly. Though your final magic proved impressive. The elf's expression turned serious. Ferder described what happened at the ritual site. You took the spell's energy into yourself? Had to, I croaked, accepting the water skin he offered. No time to dismantle it properly. Such magic should have killed you. I touched my palm where the Hallows mark remained visible but dormant. I had help. Legolas nodded as if this confirmed something. The mark of your power. Gandalf mentioned it. Not my power, I corrected. Just, connected to me somehow. I glanced around the small tent. Any word from Gandalf? None. But we sent messengers to Rivendell. They will return with aid for the wounded. I tried sitting up, wincing as my body protested. The woman from the altar. Alive, thanks to you. Still unconscious, but stable. The others say she was taken from a village 3 weeks ago, chosen specifically for her lineage. Lineage? She is descended from the Númenóreans. Old blood, with ties to the ancient world. Perfect for binding magic, according to our prisoner. That caught my attention. Prisoner. Crouch survived. If that is his name. We captured him attempting to escape during the confusion. He is, not well. I insisted on seeing him immediately. After some argument, Legolas helped me to a separate tent where Crouch was being held under guard. The man who had once been Barty Crouch Jr. was barely recognizable. His body seemed to be deteriorating, flesh gray and withered. He looked up as we entered, eyes flickering between their natural color and burning red. "Potter," he rasped. "Still alive. He will be disappointed." I approached cautiously, wand ready despite my weakness. Who will be disappointed? Voldemort or Sauron? Crouch's face contorted in a spasm, features shifting subtly as if two entities fought for control. Both. Neither. They are becoming the same. Cold dread settled in my stomach. How is that possible? Soul magic, he replied, momentarily lucid. The fragment in your scar, it calls to its creator. But here, in this world, another darkness answered. Similar magic, similar purpose. Resonating across the void. So Voldemort's soul fragment connected with Sauron's power? Crouch nodded, then suddenly straightened, his voice changing completely, becoming higher, colder. And I have learned so much from the shadow in the east. New magics, old powers forgotten in your world. I raised my wand higher. Voldemort. The thing wearing Crouch's body smiled hideously. Part of him. Just as part of him lives in you, Harry Potter. Can you feel it? The connection growing stronger. My scar prickled uncomfortably, as if responding to his words. You're lying, I said firmly. Gandalf contained the fragment in my scar years ago. Contained, yes. Removed? No. Not. Crouch leaned forward despite his restraints. It waits, dormant but present. And now it awakens as the masters call to each other across worlds. Legolas stepped forward. Enough of this. What was the purpose of your ritual? Why take prisoners of specific bloodlines? Crouch/Voldemort turned his gaze to the elf. To create permanent pathways. Anchors bound to both worlds through blood and sacrifice. The first gate would have opened into your ministry of magic, Potter. From there, others would follow. To what end? I demanded. What does Voldemort want with Middle-earth? What does any Dark Lord want? New realms to conquer. New magics to master. New servants to command. His gaze fixed on me with disturbing intensity. And you, of course. The boy who should have died. The fragment bearer who escaped. You can't reach me here. Can't I? His cruel smile widened. I already have agents in this world, wizard and native alike. The cult you disrupted is but one branch of many. And the rifts continue to spread, with or without my direct intervention. He convulsed suddenly, body arching against his bonds. Black fluid leaked from his eyes and mouth as he gasped in obvious agony. This vessel fails, he choked out. But others wait. Find me in the White City, Potter. I left you a special welcome. With a final, terrible scream, Crouch's body collapsed. The life fled from his eyes, replaced by emptiness, but not the normal emptiness of death. Something had literally torn his soul apart in its escape. What just happened? Legolas asked, visibly disturbed. I approached the body cautiously, confirming what I already sensed. Voldemort's fragment destroyed him from within. Like a parasite consuming its host. Can the enemy truly possess people in such a manner? Not Sauron, at least, not traditionally. But Voldemort? That's his specialty. I turned to Legolas with grim determination. We need to get to Minas Tirith immediately. If there's another cult cell in the White City. First, you must recover your strength, Legolas insisted. And we should wait for Gandalf's return. There's no time, I argued. You heard him, something's already waiting in Minas Tirith. Something specifically meant for me. Legolas studied me thoughtfully. You would rush directly into an enemy trap. Sometimes the best way to disarm a trap is to spring it on your terms. A hint of respect flickered across the elf's features. Perhaps. But not alone, and not in your current state. I'll be ready to travel by tomorrow, I said confidently, despite knowing my recovery would take longer. 3 days, Legolas countered. And I accompany you to Minas Tirith. My father can spare me a while longer. I hadn't expected that offer. You'd come with me? I thought wood elves avoided the realms of men. Typically, yes. But these are atypical times. Legolas's expression turned serious. What we face threatens all peoples of Middle-earth. And you, Death Wizard, while formidable, clearly requires supervision. I couldn't help laughing despite the grim situation. Supervision. I just closed an interdimensional portal. After nearly dying. Twice. The elf raised an eyebrow. Impressive magic, questionable judgment. Before I could form an appropriately witty retort, commotion outside interrupted us. Voices called in Elvish, urgent but not alarmed. Legolas responded in the same language, then turned to me. Riders approach. Rangers of the North, led by one who calls himself a friend to you. We exited the tent to find a group of weather-worn men dismounting from horses at the edge of camp. Their leader stepped forward, tall and grim-faced, with keen gray eyes that immediately found me in the crowd. Harry Potter, he greeted with a slight bow. Arathorn sends his regards. I recognized the ranger I'd healed in Rivendell the previous year. You're a long way from the northern wilds. We patrol where needed. Word reached us of strange creatures and missing villagers. His gaze shifted to the former prisoners being tended by elven healers. I see you've been busy. We disrupted a ritual, I explained. But there are more planned. Possibly in Minas Tirith. The ranger's expression darkened. That aligns with our own intelligence. Dark forces gather in the south, though the steward refuses to acknowledge the threat. Then perhaps, Legolas interjected, you might accompany us to the White City. A combined party of elves, rangers, and a unique wizard might command more attention than each alone. The ranger considered this, then nodded. I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and my sword is at your service in this matter. Something about the name struck me as significant, though I couldn't immediately place why. Gandalf had mentioned an Aragorn in our discussions of Middle-earth's political landscape, but details escaped me. We leave in 3 days, Legolas decided before I could respond. Once Harry has recovered sufficient strength. Aragorn's gaze assessed me with surprising insight. You pushed yourself beyond safe limits. I recognize the signs. Occupational hazard of interdimensional magical warfare, I quipped. The ranger didn't smile. Rest. Recover. The enemy gains nothing if you arrive in Minas Tirith half dead. His pragmatism reminded me of Gandalf, though his manner was more reserved, less prone to dramatic pronouncements. I found myself instinctively trusting his judgment. 3 days, I conceded. Then we ride for Gondor. True to Legolas's insistence, we remained in camp for 3 full days. My strength returned gradually, though the Hallows mark remained dormant despite my attempts to access its power again. Whatever had happened during the ritual had temporarily depleted that connection. The woman from the altar regained consciousness on the 2nd day. Her name was Finduilas, daughter of a minor noble family from a coastal village in Gondor. Her recollections of captivity were fragmented, but she confirmed Crouch's claims about bloodlines. The cultists had specifically sought those with ancient Númenórean ancestry. More disturbing was her account of other ritual sites. They spoke of 7 anchors, she told us, her voice still weak. 7 gates between worlds. Moria was merely the first. Did they mention locations for the others? Aragorn asked gently. She nodded. Minas Tirith was named. Also Osgiliath, Dol Amroth, the Black Gate, Isengard, and Weathertop. The last location caught my attention. Weathertop? Why there? Something about a past connection. A previous thinning between worlds. She frowned, struggling to remember. They said the Deathmaster walked there once before. All eyes turned to me. I shifted uncomfortably, recalling the stone circle Gandalf had taken me to years ago, the place where I'd first sensed the boundaries between worlds. Gandalf and I visited a site near Weathertop when I was younger, I admitted. A place where the boundaries were naturally thin. Then they're targeting existing weak points, Aragorn concluded. Places where your presence may have already affected the barrier between worlds. The implications chilled me. My very existence in Middle-earth had created vulnerabilities that Voldemort and Sauron now exploited. Every place I'd traveled with significant death magic, every location where I'd pushed my abilities, might have unknowingly become a potential gateway. We should warn the White Council, Legolas suggested. If Isengard is a target, Saruman must be informed. Gandalf will handle that, I said confidently. Our priority remains Minas Tirith, it's the most populated target, and apparently has something specifically waiting for me. And Osgiliath, Aragorn added. The ruins lie directly in our path to the White City. We should investigate both. Our plan solidified over the next day. The former prisoners would be escorted to safe havens by half of Legolas's elven company. Finduilas, still weak but insistent on helping, would accompany us to identify cult members who might have infiltrated Gondor's capital. By the third morning, I felt sufficiently recovered to travel. My magical reserves hadn't fully replenished, but basic spells came easily once more. The Hallows Mark remained dormant, however, a lingering concern I kept to myself. Our company departed at dawn, 3 elves including Legolas, 4 rangers led by Aragorn, Finduilas, and myself. We traveled south along hidden paths known to the rangers, avoiding main roads where cultists or corrupted creatures might watch. The journey allowed me to observe Aragorn more closely. The ranger carried himself with quiet authority that the others naturally respected. Though his gear was worn and practical, there was something almost regal in his bearing that seemed at odds with his role as a wilderness guardian. More intriguing was his reaction whenever Gondor was mentioned. A subtle tension would appear in his shoulders, his expression becoming carefully neutral, the practiced mask of someone concealing deeper connections. On our 4th night of travel, I finally had an opportunity to speak with him privately while we stood watch together. "You're not just a ranger, are you?" I asked directly. Aragorn gave me a measured look. "What makes you say that?" "The way the others defer to you. The fact that you speak multiple elven dialects fluently. Your knowledge of Gondor's internal politics." I shrugged. Plus, Gandalf once mentioned an Aragorn with unusual significance to Middle-earth's future. A faint smile touched his lips. Gandalf speaks too freely. That's not a denial. Aragorn turned his gaze back to the darkness surrounding our camp. We all have roles to play in the coming conflicts, Harry Potter. Some by choice, others by birth. And your role is? After a long pause, he answered simply, Heir of Isildur. The significance wasn't lost on me. Isildur, the king who cut the ring from Sauron's hand, then fell to its corruption. His bloodline represented the royal lineage of Gondor, though the stewards had ruled for generations in the absence of a king. So you're actually... I am a ranger of the north, he stated firmly. What I might become remains uncertain. I respected his reticence. Fair enough. Though I suspect you'll need to embrace that birthright sooner than you'd prefer. These cultists targeting Númenórean bloodlines, they're weakening Gondor's future leadership deliberately. Aragorn's eyes sharpened. You believe the enemy knows of my existence? I believe Sauron leaves nothing to chance. If your bloodline threatens him, he'll target anyone connected to it, whether he knows specifically about you or not. The ranger absorbed this grimly. Then our mission to Minas Tirith serves multiple purposes. We must disrupt this cult while ensuring the steward's house remains secure. And find whatever trap Voldemort left specifically for me, I added. About that. Aragorn turned to face me directly. This Voldemort, you believe he's somehow connecting with Sauron across the boundaries between worlds? It sounds impossible, I know. In my experience, Aragorn said thoughtfully, the impossible merely awaits proper understanding. What troubles me is the nature of this connection. You said both dark powers split their souls. I nodded. Voldemort created Horcruxes, objects containing fragments of his soul, anchoring him to life even if his body was destroyed. Sauron invested much of his power and essence into the One Ring, allowing him to endure after physical defeat. Similar magic with similar purpose, Aragorn mused. Perhaps such violations of natural law create resonances that can bridge even separate worlds. That's my theory. And the fragment in my scar, a piece of Voldemort that attached to me when he tried to kill me as a baby, might serve as a conduit. Aragorn studied me with new concern. You carry a piece of this dark wizard inside you. Even now. Gandalf contained it, I said defensively. It's dormant, harmless. Yet you admit these cultists are using it somehow. That it responds to their rituals. I couldn't argue with that logic. We'll deal with that problem when we've stopped their immediate plans. One crisis at a time. Aragorn accepted this pragmatic approach with a nod. Speaking of which, we should reach the ruins of Osgiliath in 2 days. I suggest we approach with extreme caution. The abandoned city offers countless places for ambush. Agreed. I can scout ahead using magical means, less detectable than physical presence. Good. Rest now. I'll take the remainder of this watch. I hesitated before returning to my bedroll. Aragorn. Thanks for not treating me like I might explode into dark magic at any moment. The elves are cautious around me. A rare smile crossed his face. I judge people by their actions, Harry Potter. Yours speak well of your character, whatever unusual powers you might possess. Coming from the future king of Gondor, that meant more than he probably realized. The ruins of Osgiliath loomed before us like the skeleton of a once magnificent beast. The ancient capital of Gondor, straddling the river Anduin, had fallen to multiple conflicts over the centuries. Now it stood abandoned save for occasional military patrols, a no-man's land between Gondor proper and the shadows of Mordor. Perfect location for hidden rituals, Legolas observed as we surveyed the ruins from a hilltop. Isolated yet accessible from both east and west. Finduilas shuddered visibly. I remember them discussing this place. The boundaries are already weak here from ancient magic. Something about a palantir once kept in the main dome. The Seeing Stone, Aragorn confirmed. Lost when the city fell. Its presence for centuries may indeed have thinned the barriers between realms. I scanned the sprawling ruins, extending my magical senses. There's definitely something active there. I can feel fluctuations in the boundary, not a full rift, but preparatory magic. Can you locate it precisely? Aragorn asked. I concentrated harder. Eastern quarter, near the river. Underground, I think. The old archives, one of Aragorn's rangers supplied. Catacombs beneath the main library. Defensible with only a few access points. Legolas surveyed our small company. 11 warriors against unknown numbers. We should observe before engaging. Agreed, I said. I can send magical reconnaissance without risking physical presence. Using a technique Gandalf had taught me years earlier, I conjured a small, semi-transparent bird, a construct of pure magic that would serve as my remote eyes and ears. With a flick of my wand, I sent it soaring toward the ruins. Through a mental link, I experienced what my magical construct encountered. The bird glided silently through crumbling archways and roofless halls, observing occasional movement, mostly wild animals that had reclaimed the city. Nothing unusual on the surface, I reported. Directing it toward the catacombs now. The construct descended through a partially collapsed library dome, navigating narrow stairwells into darkness. As it penetrated deeper, I sensed resistance, wards similar to those used by wizards in my birth world, but corrupted with Mordor's darker influence. Magical defenses, I murmured. Recently placed. Definitely our target. The bird pushed through the outer wards, weakening but persisting. In a large subterranean chamber, it finally discovered what we sought, a ritual circle similar to the one in Moria, but unoccupied. 7 hooded figures lay dead around it, their life forces recently extinguished. They're dead, I reported with confusion. All of them. Ritual circle is intact but inactive. Aragorn frowned. A rival faction? Or punishment for the Moria failure? Neither, I said as my construct examined the bodies closer. These weren't killed by weapons or conventional magic. Their life forces were extracted. Consumed. Legolas exchanged alarmed glances with his fellow elves. Soul consumption. Such darkness hasn't been practiced since the First Age. It's more calculated than that, I corrected, directing the bird to examine arcane markings carved around the chamber. These were sacrificed to power something else. A different kind of ritual altogether. The bird continued its investigation, eventually discovering a secondary chamber beyond the main ritual space. Here, 7 pedestals stood in a circle, each bearing a different object, objects that sent a shock of recognition through me even through my magical connection. Merlin's beard, I whispered. What? Aragorn pressed. What do you see? Artifacts from my world. Powerful magical objects that shouldn't possibly be here. I guided the construct closer to examine each pedestal. A golden cup, a locket with a serpent design, a diadem, a ring, a diary. What significance do these items hold? Legolas asked. I dismissed the magical construct, returning fully to my physical senses. My expression must have betrayed my horror. Those are Horcruxes, I said flatly. Voldemort's Horcruxes. The soul vessels that anchor him to life in my world. Or at least, magical copies of them created through the ritual deaths we just witnessed. Can you be certain? Aragorn questioned. If you've never seen these objects before, I've seen them in visions. In the mirror of Galadriel. In dreams connected to my scar. I paced anxiously. This is far worse than we thought. They're not just creating pathways between worlds, they're establishing Voldemort's anchors in Middle-earth directly. Giving him permanent presence here, Legolas concluded. Even without physical form. Exactly. And if these replicate the function of true Horcruxes, destroying them will be nearly impossible without specific magical methods. I ran a hand through my hair in frustration. This complicates everything. Aragorn remained practical. Are these objects currently a threat? Could removing or destroying them disrupt their purpose? They're definitely active, drawing power from those sacrificed cultists. But attempting to move or destroy them without proper preparation would be catastrophically dangerous. Then we continue to Minas Tirith, Aragorn decided. Warn the steward, gather additional forces, and return properly equipped. I nodded reluctantly. You're right. We need Gandalf for this level of dark magic. I can contain the site temporarily though, set wards to prevent others from accessing it. Do so, Legolas agreed. Then we ride with all haste to the White City. Using remote magic through my construct, I established containment wards around the catacomb, not permanent solutions, but enough to alert us to any intrusion and slow access to the Horcrux replicas. The effort drained my still recovering magical reserves, but necessity outweighed comfort. We departed immediately, pushing our mounts harder now that urgency had increased. Minas Tirith lay just 2 days' ride away if we maintained our pace. That night, camped on the plains of Gondor, I found sleep impossible. The discovery of Horcruxes in Middle-earth represented an escalation beyond anything I'd anticipated. If Voldemort had found a way to extend his soul-anchoring magic across dimensions. The Hallows mark on my palm tingled, drawing my attention. For the first time since the Moria ritual, it showed signs of activity, a faint silvery glow pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Responding to the Horcruxes, I murmured to myself. Death magic recognizing death magic. A presence approached my isolated position at the camp's edge. Finduilas, wrapped in a borrowed ranger cloak, sat beside me without invitation. You should be resting, I said, quickly concealing my glowing palm. As should you. Her voice had strengthened during our journey, though shadows of her ordeal remained in her eyes. Your magic sustains you, but even wizards require sleep. My magic is precisely why I can't sleep. Too many questions without answers. She studied me with unexpected perception. You blame yourself. For all of this. I started to deny it, then sighed. These rifts follow me, Finduilas. Every place I've used significant magic becomes a potential gateway. My very presence in Middle-earth weakens the boundaries. So you believe you should have remained in your birth world? Or perhaps never been born at all? She shook her head. Such thinking helps no one, least of all those who depend on your power now. Power that makes me a target. That puts others in danger. Power that saved 17 lives in Moria, including mine. Her hand touched mine briefly, right over the concealed Hallows mark. Whatever burden you carry, you are not alone in bearing it. The mark flared at her touch, causing her to pull back in surprise. What was that? She asked. I hesitated, then slowly uncurled my fingers, revealing the glowing symbol. Something connected to my abilities with death magic. A mark that appeared about a year ago. Finduilas examined it with scholarly interest rather than fear. The triangle contains the circle, bisected by the line. 3 symbols united as one. You recognize it? Not specifically. But the symbolism is ancient, 3 powers in balance, contained within boundaries, yet extending beyond them. She traced the air above my palm. In the oldest Númenórean texts, similar markings represented transcendence, existing simultaneously in multiple realms of being. This was a perspective I hadn't considered. Gandalf called it the symbol of the Deathly Hallows, 3 artifacts that, united, supposedly make one the Master of Death. Master of Death, she repeated thoughtfully. Perhaps not mastery over death itself, but over the boundaries death represents. The threshold between states of existence. Her insight struck uncomfortably close to my recent experiences. During the ritual in Moria, I hadn't merely commanded death magic, I'd literally existed between realms, perceiving and manipulating the boundaries directly. That would explain why the cultists keep calling me the Death Master, I mused. And why both Voldemort and Sauron seem so interested in my abilities. If you can move between realms, manipulate the boundaries. Finduilas didn't complete the thought. Then I might strengthen those boundaries as well as weaken them, I finished. Close rifts permanently rather than just temporarily. Hope flickered for the first time since our discovery in Osgiliath. If the Hallows mark represented not just power over death but authority over boundaries themselves. I need the actual Hallows, I said, thinking aloud. Galadriel said they're being drawn to me across worlds. If I could unite them. Then perhaps you become what the enemy fears most, Finduilas suggested. Not merely a wizard with unusual powers, but a guardian of the boundaries they seek to destroy. The mark pulsed brighter, as if responding to this new understanding. For the first time, I wondered if my presence in Middle-earth wasn't a cosmic accident but something with purpose, preparing me for a role neither world fully understood. Thank you, I told Finduilas sincerely. You've given me much to consider. She smiled slightly. My family were scholars before they were nobles. Sometimes a fresh perspective reveals patterns others miss. As she returned to her bedroll, I remained awake, watching the Hallows Mark pulse with newfound activity. Tomorrow we would reach Minas Tirith and whatever trap awaited me there. But now, at least, I had the beginning of a plan, not just to confront the immediate threat, but to address the fundamental problem. If I was destined to be Master of Death, perhaps it was time to embrace that title fully, not as conquest over mortality, but as guardianship of the boundaries between worlds. Minas Tirith rose like a mountain of white stone on the horizon, its 7-tiered levels gleaming in the morning sun. Even from a distance, the city's grandeur impressed, a testament to Númenórean engineering and ambition. "The White City," Aragorn murmured beside me, an unreadable emotion coloring his voice. "Last major stronghold of the Dunedain in the south." "You've been here before," I observed, not a question. "Many years ago. Under a different name." His expression closed, clearly unwilling to elaborate. Our approach did not go unnoticed. Before we reached the main road leading to the gates, a patrol of mounted guards intercepted us, soldiers in the distinctive armor of the Citadel Guard, emblazoned with the white tree of Gondor. "Halt," their captain commanded. "Identify yourselves and state your business in Gondor." Aragorn stepped forward as our spokesperson, a strategic choice, as his manner and speech carried natural authority. "Rangers of the North, bringing urgent tidings to the steward. We travel with elves of Mirkwood and Harry of Rivendell on matters concerning Gondor's security." The captain's eyes widened at the unusual composition of our company, particularly when they fell on the elves. Relations between Gondor and the elven realms had grown distant over the centuries. What matters of security would bring such diverse company to our gates, he asked suspiciously. "Matters best discussed directly with Lord Denethor," Aragorn replied firmly. After a moment's hesitation, the captain nodded. "You will be escorted to the citadel. Your weapons remain with you, but I caution restraint. These are uncertain times, and strangers, even those who name themselves allies, are viewed with caution." "Understood," Aragorn agreed. As we followed our escort toward the massive gates, Legolas moved his horse alongside mine. "The city is fearful," he observed quietly. "Guards stand double at every post." "They sense the growing shadow," I replied. "Even if they don't understand its nature." "There's something else," the elf added, his keen eyes scanning the city walls. "Someone watches us with more than casual interest." I followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual among the numerous guards and citizens visible on the ramparts. "Keep alert," I murmured. "Voldemort said he left something specifically for me here. We should assume we're under observation from the moment we enter." We passed through the massive main gate into the first circle of the city. Immediately, the difference between Minas Tirith and other human settlements I'd visited became apparent. Every building, every street, every fountain was crafted with precision and artistry. Despite signs of age and wear, the fundamental magnificence remained. As we ascended through the circles, the architecture grew increasingly refined. By the 6th level, even the smallest homes displayed craftsmanship that would impress elven artisans. Our escort led us to the tunnel that accessed the 7th and highest level, the citadel itself. Here we were met by more guards, these bearing the distinctive black and silver of the steward's personal regiment. "The steward will grant you audience," their commander informed us. Though he expresses surprise at rangers bringing elves and a. He glanced at me uncertainly. "Wizard," I supplied helpfully. "Indeed." His expression suggested he found this claim dubious. "You will be announced shortly. Please wait here." We were shown to a courtyard featuring an impressive but withered white tree, clearly the original of the symbol emblazoned throughout the city. "The White Tree of Gondor," Aragorn said softly, approaching it with unexpected reverence. "Descended from Nimloth of Númenor." "It appears dead," I observed. "Yet not removed," he replied. "A sign of hope that it might bloom again, under the right circumstances." His meaning wasn't subtle. The tree, like the absent kingship, awaited restoration. I wondered how the current steward might react to Aragorn's presence if he knew the ranger's true identity. After a brief wait, we were summoned into the great hall where Denethor, steward of Gondor, held court. The vast chamber felt oppressively formal after our days in the wilderness. Denethor himself sat in a black stone chair at the hall's far end, notably positioned just before the true throne, which remained symbolically empty. The steward was a stern-faced man of late middle age, with piercing grey eyes and an air of brittle pride. He observed our approach with undisguised skepticism. Rangers from the north, elves from Mirkwood, and his gaze fixed on me, a self-proclaimed wizard. Unusual times indeed that bring such a company to Minas Tirith. Aragorn stepped forward, bowing with precise formality. Lord Denethor, we bring warning of a threat to Gondor's security. Evidence of dark rituals performed in Osgiliath's ruins, and reason to believe similar activities may be occurring within Minas Tirith itself. Denethor's expression hardened. Gondor has stood against the shadows of Mordor for generations. What new threat could possibly require the intervention of wandering rangers and woodland elves? The dismissive tone might have offended others, but Aragorn remained diplomatic. Not a new threat, my lord, but an evolution of the ancient one. The enemy employs methods unfamiliar to even the wisest among us. Methods from another world, I added, stepping forward. Creatures and magic foreign to Middle-earth. Denethor's attention shifted fully to me. And you claim expertise in these foreign methods? I do. I was born in that other world, brought here as a child. The enemy now exploits connections between realms to enhance his power. A flash of something, recognition. Alarm, crossed Denethor's face before his expression returned to careful neutrality. Bold claims, he said finally. Yet you offer no evidence beyond your word. Finduilas stepped forward unexpectedly. My lord, I was held captive by these cultists. They took me specifically for my Númenórean bloodline, to use in rituals creating pathways between worlds. And you are? Denethor asked, studying her more carefully. Finduilas, daughter of Adrahil of Dol Amroth's house. This clearly registered with Denethor. Adrahil's line serves Gondor loyally. Your father will be relieved to learn of your safety. He reported your disappearance months ago. Then you acknowledge such abductions have occurred? Aragorn pressed. Denethor's jaw tightened. There have been incidents. Disappearances lacking explanation. My agents investigate, but evidence of coordinated cult activity remains unproven. We have proof, I stated firmly. In Osgiliath's catacombs, a ritual site with magical artifacts positioned to create stable gateways between worlds. Osgiliath falls under Gondor's jurisdiction, Denethor replied coldly. If such evidence exists, my forces would have discovered it. The conversation was rapidly deteriorating. Denethor clearly resisted external intervention, viewing our warnings as challenges to his authority rather than genuine assistance. Legolas, who had remained silent thus far, spoke unexpectedly. Lord Steward, the elves of Mirkwood rarely involve themselves in the affairs of men. Our presence here speaks to the severity of the threat. We ask only that you permit investigation within your city before what, Elf Prince? Denethor interrupted sharply. Before disaster befalls the city I have governed for decades. Before the White Tower falls to shadow. Your implication insults both my vigilance and Gondor's strength. The tension in the hall grew palpable. I caught Aragorn subtly signaling the rangers to remain calm. This confrontation risked derailing our entire mission. Taking a calculated risk, I stepped forward and drew my wand. Lord Denethor, perhaps a demonstration would clarify the nature of our concerns. Before anyone could object, I cast a simple revealing charm designed to highlight magical concealments. The spell spread through the hall like rippling water, harmless but visible. Then something unexpected happened. The spell caught on Denethor himself, briefly outlining his form in flickering blue light. More concerning, a secondary aura manifested around his head, a sickly green glow that reminded me uncomfortably of the killing curse. I terminated the spell immediately, but not before everyone present had witnessed the reaction. Dead silence fell over the hall. What manner of insult is this? Denethor demanded, rising from his chair. Guards! Armed men stepped forward from the hall's perimeter, hands on weapons. Wait! I raised empty hands. That wasn't supposed to happen. Something's influencing you, Lord Steward. Something magical in nature. Lies and slander. Denethor's face flushed with anger. I will not be accused of corruption in my own hall. Aragorn intervened, his voice calm but authoritative. My lord, the spell was diagnostic only, not an attack. If it revealed unexpected influence, that only confirms our warnings about subtle threats infiltrating Gondor. Denethor seemed momentarily uncertain, his hand rising unconsciously to his temple as if experiencing sudden pain. Then his expression hardened once more. You will all be escorted from the citadel immediately. Gondor requires no foreign intervention in its security matters. My lord, Aragorn tried again, at least permit us to. Enough. Denethor's voice echoed through the hall. Guards, remove them from my presence. They may remain in the lower circles until morning, then depart my lands. The guards moved to surround us. Fighting would be catastrophic for our mission, so we allowed ourselves to be escorted out. Once in the courtyard, our original escort captain approached, looking uncomfortable with the situation. My apologies, he said quietly. The steward has been under strain recently. Accommodations will be provided on the 4th level. You are confined there until departure tomorrow. Captain, I addressed him directly, something's wrong with Lord Denethor. That spell should never have reacted to him unless he's under magical influence. The captain glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. There have been changes. The Lord Steward spends hours alone in the tower with an ancient seeing stone. He emerges, altered. More paranoid, more hostile to potential allies. A palantir, Aragorn murmured. The seeing stones are not inherently evil, but they can be manipulated, shown selective visions to influence the viewer. That would explain the magical aura, I agreed. If Sauron controls what Denethor sees through the palantir. We can discuss this elsewhere, the captain interrupted urgently. Too many ears in the citadel. Come. He led us to the 6th level, then down to quarters in the 4th circle, a moderately comfortable inn that had clearly been commandeered for our use. Once inside, with guards posted outside rather than within, we could speak freely. This complicates matters significantly, Legolas observed. If the steward himself is compromised. Not fully compromised, Aragorn corrected. Influenced, manipulated, but still himself. His suspicion of outsiders is natural for Gondor's rulers, merely amplified by whatever he's seen through the palantir. I paced the room, connecting pieces mentally. This has to be the trap Voldemort mentioned. Denethor's strategic position makes him the perfect target for subtle manipulation. Can you counteract such influence? Finduilas asked. Possibly, but not without direct access to either Denethor or the palantir. Both seem unlikely after today's performance. The captain, who had introduced himself as Baragond, nodded grimly. Direct intervention with the steward is impossible now. However, he added, lowering his voice further, there are others in Minas Tirith who share your concerns about outside influences. The Lord Faramir, younger son of Denethor, commands rangers in Ithilien but returns to the city periodically. When do you expect him next? Aragorn asked. Within days, according to reports. His rangers have been tracking unusual activities along the Anduin, reports matching your descriptions of creatures not native to Middle-earth. This was the first positive development since entering the city. Can you get a message to him when he arrives? I asked. Yes, discreetly. Baragond looked troubled. But understand, even suggesting the steward is compromised borders on treason. I act only out of loyalty to Gondor itself. Your courage is noted and appreciated, Aragorn assured him. For now, we will appear to comply with the steward's order, remaining in our assigned quarters. But we must continue our investigation covertly. I can help there, I offered. Magical reconnaissance, similar to what I used in Osgiliath, but more subtle. And I can move through the city unnoticed, Legolas added. Few humans look up to the rooftops and higher windows. Baragon smiled slightly. I see why you alarm Lord Denethor. Such capabilities in unknown hands would concern any ruler. We're not his enemies, I said firmly. Perhaps not intentionally. The captain rose to leave. But change itself can be threatening to those who maintain order through tradition. And you, wizard from another world, represent change in its most unpredictable form. After Baragon departed, we established watches and prepared for covert operations within the city. Despite our setback with Denethor, the mission continued. The cult activities remained our priority, even if official cooperation was no longer forthcoming. That night, as the others rested or kept watch, I stood at our chamber's window overlooking the vast expanse of Minas Tirith. Somewhere in this labyrinthine city, Voldemort's influence had taken root. The question was no longer if his magic had infiltrated Middle-earth, but how deeply it had already spread. The Hallows mark on my palm glowed steadily now, reacting to the proximity of whatever dark magic permeated the city. I could feel its pull, urging me toward something. Whether trap or opportunity remained to be seen. One thing was certain, Voldemort had made his move. Now it was my turn to counter. For 3 days we conducted careful reconnaissance throughout Minas Tirith. Legolas and his elven companions mapped the city's hidden routes from above, identifying locations with unusual security or activity patterns. The rangers, less conspicuous among humans, gathered information in taverns and marketplaces about recent strange occurrences. I focused my efforts on magical detection, sending nearly invisible constructs to scan for traces of wizarding magic throughout the circles of the city. The work was painstaking and required tremendous concentration, but gradually a pattern emerged. On the evening of the 3rd day, we gathered to share findings. The 6th circle contains multiple focal points of foreign magic, I reported, indicating locations on the rough map we'd created. Particularly around the Houses of Healing and the Hall of Records. The Hall of Records would provide access to bloodline information, Aragorn noted. Perfect for identifying potential ritual victims with Númenórean ancestry. Legolas added, we've observed unusual movement patterns among certain city guards, regular rotations interrupted, posts abandoned briefly during specific times. And the lower circles whisper of disappearances, one of the rangers contributed. Not just nobles or those with special lineage, but ordinary citizens with specific skills, archivists, healers, astronomers. Finduilas, who had been studying our compiled information, identified a pattern. They're gathering knowledge as much as sacrifices. Each missing person represents expertise in some aspect of Middle-earth's fundamental systems, records, healing, celestial patterns. Building comprehensive understanding of this world's underlying structure, I concluded. Perfect for creating stable interdimensional connections. But where is their base of operations? Aragorn pressed. We've identified suspicious activities throughout the city, but not their central location. That remained our biggest gap. Despite extensive searching, we'd found no equivalent to the ritual site in Osgiliath, no obvious gathering place for cult activities. Perhaps they're more cautious here, Legolas suggested. Operating in smaller cells, communicating through intermediaries. Or they're hiding somewhere we haven't thought to look, I mused. Somewhere obvious yet inaccessible. A knock at our door interrupted the discussion. Baragon entered, looking both excited and nervous. Lord Faramir has returned to the city, he announced quietly. He agrees to meet with you tonight, secretly, in the old armory beneath the 5th circle. This was the opportunity we'd been waiting for. If anyone could provide both information and legitimate authority to continue our investigation, it would be the steward's son. How many can attend without raising suspicion? Aragorn asked practically. 3 at most, Baragond advised. The passages to the meeting place require stealth. After brief discussion, we decided that Aragorn, Legolas, and I would go, representing the 3 major factions of our company while bringing complementary perspectives to the meeting. Baragond returned at midnight to guide us through a complex series of back passages and forgotten tunnels that connected the city's levels outside the main thoroughfares. The route revealed aspects of Minas Tirith's history not visible to casual visitors, older sections built upon, passages sealed during various reconstructions, evidence of the city's evolution over centuries. The old armory proved to be a cavernous space beneath the Fifth Circle, once a primary military storehouse, now used only for overflow equipment storage. Amid rows of disused weapon racks and armor stands, a single figure waited beside a small, hooded lantern. Faramir, son of Denethor, bore a strong resemblance to his father in features but little in manner. Where the steward projected rigid authority, Faramir carried himself with thoughtful confidence. His ranger gear suggested he'd come directly from the field without stopping to adopt court attire, practicality over protocol. He studied our approach with keen intelligence, his gaze lingering particularly on Aragorn. Something like recognition flickered in his eyes before he addressed us collectively. Captain Baragond speaks highly of your concerns, he began without preamble. Ordinarily, I would consider reports of otherworldly threats and magical cults with skepticism. However, he gestured to a table behind him covered with maps and documents. My own investigations support your claims. He invited us to examine the materials, detailed records of unusual sightings along Gondor's borders, witness accounts of creatures matching my descriptions of corrupted dementors and werewolves, and most significantly, a comprehensive list of missing persons throughout Gondor's territories. These disappearances follow no conventional pattern, Faramir explained. Highborn and low, military and civilian, from diverse regions. The only commonality is timing, all within the past 8 months. Since the ritual attempts began, I confirmed, examining his meticulous notes. You've been tracking this independently. For several months. My rangers encountered strange creatures in Ithilien that defied categorization. Investigations led to evidence of organized activity rather than random monstrosities. Faramir's expression darkened. When I reported my findings to my father, he dismissed them as exaggerated border skirmishes. He forbade further investigation. The steward is not himself, Aragorn said carefully. Faramir's eyes sharpened. Explain. I described the revealing spell's unexpected reaction to Denethor, and Baragond's information about the Palantir. Faramir listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This confirms my worst fears, he said finally. My father has always been proud, sometimes rigid in his thinking. But recently, his judgment has become. He searched for the right word, distorted. Especially regarding matters connected to Mordor. The Palantir shows him selective truths, Legolas suggested. Crafting a narrative of isolation and suspicion. While distracting him from the real threat within his own city, I added. Classic misdirection. Faramir nodded grimly. So it would seem. But this presents us with a dilemma. Without my father's authorization, any official investigation or countermeasures within Minas Tirith would constitute usurpation of his authority. Yet inaction guarantees continued cult operations, Aragorn countered. More disappearances, more rituals, greater danger to Gondor itself. Precisely my dilemma. Faramir sighed. As his son, I owe him loyalty. As Gondor's servant, I owe the realm protection. When those duties conflict. You serve Gondor best by acting now, Legolas stated firmly. Even without official sanction. Faramir studied each of us in turn, then made his decision. Very well. I will provide what assistance I can while maintaining plausible deniability. My rangers in the city answer to me directly, a small force, but reliable and discreet. We need to locate their primary ritual site, I said. We've identified suspicious activities throughout the city but not their central operation. I may have information relevant to that search. Faramir moved to another table, unrolling an architectural diagram of Minas Tirith. The city contains numerous forgotten spaces, chambers and passages dating to its original construction, subsequently built over or sealed during renovations. He indicated several areas throughout the diagram, mostly deep within the mountain upon which the city was built. These represent the oldest sections, many no longer on official maps. My brother and I explored some as children, but others remain sealed by ancient decree. Perfect hiding places, Aragorn observed. Accessible only to those with specialized knowledge. And perhaps, I added, following a hunch, connected to the original magical foundations of the city itself. Faramir looked up sharply. What do you mean? Minas Tirith wasn't built through mundane means alone, I explained. The Númenóreans incorporated enchantments into its very structure, protective wards, strengthening spells, preservation magics. If cultists wanted to create stable pathways between worlds, they would target locations where the city's original magic was strongest. Faramir completed the thought. The cornerstones of power. Exactly. And those would be. Faramir's finger moved to the diagram center, indicating a point deep within the mountain. The Hallows. A sacred chamber beneath the citadel itself, where the city's founding stones were laid with blessings of both Eldar and Dúnedain. That has to be it, I said with growing excitement. Does this chamber remain accessible? Theoretically, yes. Through passages beneath the Tower of Ecthelion. Faramir hesitated. However, those passages lie within my father's direct authority. None enter without his explicit permission. Which explains why we detected no obvious cult movement, Legolas realized. They're operating literally beneath the steward's feet, using his own compromised judgment as cover. The implications were staggering. If the cult had established their primary ritual site in Minas Tirith's most magically significant location, while simultaneously influencing the city's ruler through the Palantir. We need to move quickly, I urged. How soon can we access these passages? Faramir considered the question carefully. Tomorrow evening. My father conducts a private ceremony commemorating my mother's passing. The tower will be minimally guarded during those hours. Will you lead us there yourself? Aragorn asked. I must attend my father during the ceremony, absence would raise immediate suspicion. But I can provide detailed maps and assign trustworthy guards to assist your entry. It wasn't ideal, but it might be our only opportunity. We spent the next hour planning the operation in detail, identifying access routes, contingencies, and extraction plans if things went wrong. As we prepared to return to our quarters, Faramir pulled me aside for a private word. This wizard from your world, Voldemort. You have personal history with him. Not a question, but I nodded confirmation. When confronting personal enemies, Faramir said carefully, emotion often clouds judgment. Whatever you find beneath the tower, remember your primary purpose. Gundor's safety must take precedence over personal vendettas. I understand, I assured him, though his warning struck uncomfortably close to my own concerns. The connection between Voldemort and me, the soul fragment, the prophecies, the repeated confrontations across worlds, created a relationship beyond simple enmity. I hope you do, Faramir replied. Because I suspect whatever awaits in the Hallows was placed there specifically for you. A trap requires bait the target cannot resist. His perception was unsettling. What makes you say that? The timing. The location. The specificity of certain disappearances. Faramir's gaze was penetrating. I've studied military strategy since childhood, Harry Potter. This has all the hallmarks of an elaborate ambush, one designed not just to eliminate an enemy, but to capture them. You think they want me alive? I think whatever power you represent, this death mastery others whisper about, has value to your enemies beyond your elimination. The conversation left me deeply unsettled as we returned through the secret passages to our quarters. Faramir's warning echoed concerns I'd harbored but pushed aside in the urgency of our mission. What if everything, the rifts, the cult activities, Denethor's manipulation, was an elaborate scheme to draw me precisely where they wanted me? Not to kill me, but to use me somehow. The Hallows mark on my palm throbbed as if confirming my suspicions. Whatever awaited beneath the Tower of Ecthelion, it called to the power emerging within me. The question remained whether answering that call would lead to victory or catastrophe. The next evening arrived with agonizing slowness. We spent the day making final preparations, checking weapons, reviewing maps, establishing emergency signals with the rangers and elves remaining in our quarters. Faramir's trusted guards arrived after sunset, guiding Aragorn, Legolas, and me through a complex series of passages that bypassed normal security checkpoints. Our route took us up to the seventh circle via servants' corridors and maintenance tunnels, eventually bringing us to a small courtyard behind the Tower of Ecthelion. The entrance lies beneath that storage building, our guide whispered, indicating a nondescript structure against the citadel's rear wall. According to Lord Faramir's instructions, the access mechanism is hidden behind the third wine rack. The building proved to be a wine cellar, stocked with vintages for citadel functions. We located the specified rack and discovered a cleverly concealed lever mechanism. When activated, a section of stone floor slid aside, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "We will stand guard here," the senior guard promised. "The signal for emergency extraction is 3 sharp whistles. We can hold this position for 1 hour without raising suspicion." With nods of acknowledgement, we began our descent. The staircase spiraled downward into the mountain's heart, the air growing cooler and heavy with ancient stone dust. I cast a subtle lumos to light our way, keeping the illumination minimal to avoid detection. After several minutes of descent, the stairs ended at a roughly carved tunnel. Unlike the precise stonework above, these passages had an organic quality, following natural fissures in the mountain, merely enhanced rather than fully constructed. "Old," Legolas murmured, running his fingers along the wall. "Predating the city itself. This was a sacred site before Minas Tirith rose above it." Aragorn consulted Faramir's map. "The Hallows should lie ahead, beyond 2 more junctions. According to these notes, we should expect no physical barriers. The chamber's protection was primarily through secrecy and reverence, not locks." "No physical barriers perhaps," I cautioned, "but I'm detecting magical ones." Indeed, as we progressed deeper, my magical senses detected increasingly potent wards ahead. Some felt ancient, part of the original protections Faramir had mentioned. Others were unmistakably newer, with the distinctive signature of wizarding magic from my world. At the second junction, I called a halt. "Something's wrong. These newer wards, they're not just protective. They're designed to collect something." "Collect?" Aragorn questioned. "What do you mean?" "Like magical reservoirs." I extended my senses carefully, probing the enchantments without triggering them. "They absorb and store magical energy, specifically energy related to..." I frowned, concentrating harder. "Related to life and death transitions." Legolas and Aragorn exchanged concerned glances. "The death magic you practice," Legolas observed. "They're designed to capture it. Or amplify it," I said grimly. Either way, Faramir was right. This is a trap specifically designed for me, or rather, for my particular magical signature. "Can you bypass these wards?" Aragorn asked. "Not completely. They're too integrated with the chamber's original magic." I considered our options. "I can create a temporary corridor through them, enough for us to pass without fully triggering the collection effect. But it will alert whoever set them that we're here. So we lose the element of surprise," Aragorn concluded. "But gain access nonetheless." "Exactly. Do it," he decided. "Better to confront this threat directly than retreat without knowledge." Carefully, I cast a specialized warding spell, one Gandalf had taught me for navigating ancient elven ruins with their sometimes unpredictable protections. The magic created a shimmering pathway through the invisible barrier of wards, like parting a curtain of energy. "Stay close behind me," I instructed. "The corridor will only last about 30 seconds once I start moving." We proceeded in tight formation, passing through multiple layers of increasingly powerful enchantments. I could feel them reacting to my presence, sensing the death magic inherent in my abilities, reaching for the Hallows mark that now burned hot on my palm. The final barrier gave way to a vast natural cavern transformed into a sacred space. The Hallows of Minas Tirith spread before us, a circular chamber with a domed ceiling carved directly from the mountain stone. 7 great pillars surrounded a central dais where something glowed with blue-white radiance. But the chamber's original majesty had been corrupted. Dark symbols marked the floor in patterns I recognized from both wizarding rituals and Mordor's black speech. Chains of enchanted metal formed a ritual circle atop the ancient dais. And within that circle, "Merlin's beard," I whispered. Upon the dais stood 3 objects that radiated power so intensely it was almost visible to normal sight. A wand of unusual design, carved with symbols resembling clusters of elderberries. A stone the color of midnight, mounted in a silver setting. And a cloak that seemed to shift between visibility and shadow, even as it lay motionless. The Deathly Hallows. Somehow transported across worlds, placed here as bait in the most perfect trap imaginable. "Harry," Aragorn warned, drawing his sword. "We are not alone." Indeed, figures emerged from alcoves around the chamber's perimeter, hooded cultists in the same attire we'd encountered in Moria. But these moved differently, more precise, more controlled. Not converted creatures but human adherents to whatever twisted faith the cult represented. "The Death Master arrives," announced a voice from behind the dais. A tall figure stepped forward, human in form but wrong somehow, as if the body were merely a vessel for something else. "Right on schedule." The figure lowered its hood, revealing a face I'd never seen personally but recognized instantly from visions and descriptions, pale, snake-like, with burning red eyes and slits for nostrils. Not Voldemort himself, that would be impossible, but a perfect replica, a constructed form designed to house a fragment of his consciousness. "Tom Riddle," I addressed him deliberately, using Voldemort's birth name as a subtle provocation. "Or whatever fraction of him you represent." The Voldemort construct smiled thinly. "Naming games? How juvenile. Though I suppose you never had the chance to mature properly, raised by a wandering grey fool instead of fulfilling your true destiny." "My destiny is my own," I replied, keeping my wand ready as I assessed our tactical situation. 12 cultists visible, possibly more hidden. The construct itself radiating immense magical power. And the Hallows, pulsing with energy that called to the mark on my palm like a physical tether. "Is it?" The construct gestured expansively. "Everything that has brought you to this moment was orchestrated, Harry Potter. Your passage between worlds. Your training in death magic. Your growing connection to the Hallows. All leading to this chamber, this moment. For what purpose?" Aragorn demanded, drawing the construct's attention. "Ah, the hidden king," the construct acknowledged with mocking deference. "So many important players gathering for the final act. The purpose, heir of Isildur, is transcendence." "Transcendence?" I repeated skeptically. "Between worlds. Between life and death itself." The construct approached the dais, running a finger along the Elder Wand without quite touching it. "What Sauron seeks through the ring, what I seek through Horcruxes, permanent existence beyond the constraints of mortal limitation. And you, Harry Potter, are the key to achieving it. Because of the fragment in my scar, I guessed. The connection between us. Partly. But more because of what you've become since arriving in this world. The perfect bridge between realms, attuned to the boundaries of existence itself." The construct's red eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity. "The true master of death, whether you accept the title or not. The Hallows mark burned fiercer, responding to both the artifacts and the construct's words. I could feel power building in the chamber, not just from the cult's preparations, but from the interaction between the mark, the Hallows, and my own innate abilities. You arranged all this, I realized aloud. Sent the corrupted creatures through the rifts, established cults, manipulated Denethor through the Palantir, all to bring me here, to this specific place. With these specific artifacts, the construct confirmed. Transported across worlds at tremendous cost. The Hallows recognize you, Harry Potter. They have always been yours to claim. I merely facilitated the reunion. Why? What do you gain? The perfect vessel. The construct gestured to its own body. This form is temporary, flawed, a magical construct housing a fragment of consciousness. But you live. You breathe. You span worlds. Once I possess your body, with the power of the United Hallows. You'd control both realms, Legolas concluded, his bow drawn and aimed steadily at the construct. Control. No. Transcend. Become something beyond Dark Lord or Wizard or human limitation. The construct's voice took on an almost reverential quality. A new order of being, with dominion over life, death, and the boundaries between all realms of existence. It was insane, megalomaniacal, and terrifyingly plausible. If Voldemort could possess my body, harness the Hallows through me, and utilize the soul connection already established through the scar fragment. You've overlooked something fundamental, I said, playing for time while searching for weaknesses in their preparations. The Hallows choose their master. They can't be controlled through coercion or possession. True, the construct acknowledged. Which is why you will claim them willingly. Before I could question this absurd assertion, the construct made a sharp gesture. Hidden cultists emerged, dragging 3 bound figures into the chamber. With horror, I recognized Finduilas among them, alongside 2 of our ranger companions who had remained at our quarters. Predictable complications in your otherwise excellent plan, the construct said with false sympathy. You left allies vulnerable while pursuing the greater threat. Let them go, I demanded, magic gathering instinctively around my wand. They're not part of this. Everything and everyone is part of this, Harry Potter. The question is whether they survive their role. The construct nodded to his followers, who positioned the prisoners at 3 equidistant points around the ritual circle. A simple choice. Claim the Hallows yourself, accepting their power and the responsibility they represent, or watch your friends die in ways specifically designed to be memorable. Aragorn tensed beside me, clearly calculating odds for a rescue attempt. Legolas had already subtly adjusted his aim, preparing to take out the cultists nearest the prisoners. The moment you attack, the construct warned, reading their intentions, specialized wards will activate. Your friends die instantly, and the backlash will incapacitate all of you. I designed contingencies very carefully, accounting for elven reflexes and ranger tactics. He's not bluffing, I said quietly to my companions. I can sense the trigger wards around the prisoners. What do we do? Legolas asked, not lowering his bow despite the warning. I assessed our options rapidly. Direct confrontation would likely fail given the extensive preparations evident throughout the chamber. Retreat meant abandoning our friends to certain death. Stalling might work temporarily but solved nothing long-term. Which left the most dangerous option, playing along, but with my own modifications. I'll claim the Hallows, I announced. The construct's expression shifted to triumphant satisfaction. Wise choice. Harry, no, Aragorn cautioned. Whatever power they offer isn't worth the risk. I'm not doing this for power, I replied, my eyes fixed on the construct. I'm doing it because it's the only way to end this permanently. Understanding dawned in Aragorn's eyes, not approval, but recognition of my strategy. If the Hallows truly responded to me as their rightful master, claiming them might provide power the cult hadn't fully anticipated. Release my friends first, I demanded. As a show of good faith. The construct laughed coldly. You're not in a position to negotiate terms. Approach the dais. Claim what has always been yours. Then we discuss releases. I moved forward slowly, senses hyperalert for additional traps. As I neared the dais, the halo's energy intensified, reaching for me, or more specifically, for the mark on my palm that now glowed golden in response. The construct watched with hungry anticipation. You feel it, don't you? The recognition. The rightness. They were created for one master, and you are he. Standing before the artifacts, I could indeed sense their pull, not coercive but invitational, like pieces of myself I hadn't known were missing. The Elder Wand vibrated slightly as my hand hovered near it. The resurrection stone seemed to darken and lighten in pulses matching my heartbeat. The invisibility cloak rippled as if stirred by a breeze despite the still air. How do I know these are genuine? I asked, still playing for time while formulating my approach. They could be replicas, copies created to trick me. Test them, the construct invited. The wand responds to your magic uniquely. The stone permits communion with those beyond the veil. The cloak conceals absolutely, even from death itself. I reached for the wand first, the most immediately useful in our current predicament. As my fingers closed around it, power surged through my arm, connecting with my magical core in a way my father's wand never had. This was indeed the Elder Wand, the death stick of legend. Next, the Resurrection Stone. I didn't activate its primary power, but even touching it enhanced my awareness of the boundary between life and death. I could perceive the life forces of everyone in the chamber with unprecedented clarity, including the construct's unnatural pseudo-life. Finally, the invisibility cloak. Unlike normal invisibility cloaks that merely bend light, this one seemed to shift its holder partially out of physical reality itself. True invisibility through dimensional displacement. All three halos were genuine, and all three recognized me as their rightful wielder. The mark on my palm flared brighter as each connection established, forming a circuit of power unlike anything I'd experienced before. Yes, the construct hissed eagerly. Unite them. Complete the circuit. Become what you were meant to be. I glanced at the prisoners, ensuring they remained unharmed, then at my companions, giving them the subtlest nod of preparation. I claim these halos, I declared formally, as their rightful master. Not through conquest or coercion, but by right of understanding their true purpose. I brought the three artifacts together, wand in my right hand, stone in my left, cloak draped across my shoulders. The completion of the circuit was immediate and overwhelming. Power exploded outward from the mark on my palm, engulfing me in golden light that spread to encompass the halos themselves. My awareness expanded exponentially, beyond the chamber, beyond Minas Tirith, beyond the boundaries of Middle-earth itself. I perceived the web of connections between worlds, the thinning barriers, the intentional ruptures created by the cult's rituals. More intimately, I sensed the fragment of soul within my scar, dormant but present, reaching for the larger consciousness within the construct before me. The connection between us flared visible as a dark thread against the golden light. The construct's triumphant expression faltered slightly. This wasn't proceeding exactly as planned. The power flowing through me remained under my control rather than creating vulnerability for possession. Now, I said, my voice resonating with newfound authority, release my friends. Not yet, the construct countered, gesturing to his followers. The ritual requires completion. Your ascension remains partial. There is no ritual, I replied calmly, understanding flooding through me as the halos enhanced my perception. Only your attempt to create a conduit for possession. But the halos don't work that way. They don't corrupt their master, they illuminate. With that illumination came clarity about what needed to be done. Using the Elder Wand, I cast a shield around our imprisoned friends, not a conventional protego but a boundary spell that removed them temporarily from the ritual's influence. The construct hissed in anger. Stop this. You don't understand the forces you're interfering with. Actually, I countered, I understand them better than you ever could. With my enhanced perception, I could see the ritual's true design, not to empower me, but to extract the unique magical signature that allowed me to traverse worlds. That signature, combined with the Hallow's power, would have created a permanent gateway between realms, allowing Voldemort and Sauron to merge their powers completely. Aragorn, Legolas, I called without taking my eyes off the construct, free the prisoners. I'll handle the rest. The construct screamed orders to its followers, who moved to intercept my companions. But their movements seemed sluggish through my Hallow's enhanced perception. Time itself responded differently around me now. Using the Elder Wand, I disrupted the ritual circle with a focused blast of magic. The carefully arranged symbols shattered, their power dispersing harmlessly rather than explosively as the construct had likely intended. You fool, the construct raged. Do you have any idea what you're destroying? The potential? The power? I know exactly what I'm destroying, I replied evenly. Your last chance to corrupt two worlds simultaneously. Now I turn my attention to the construct itself, the vessel housing the fragment of Voldemort's consciousness. Through the Hallows, I could perceive its true nature, a magically animated form created through blood sacrifice and soul magic, tethered to Voldemort's primary consciousness across the dimensional boundary. More importantly, I could see how to sever that connection permanently. Tom Riddle, I addressed the fragment directly, your Horcruxes in Osgiliath have already been contained. Your cultists are being rounded up across Middle-earth as we speak. And now, your personal gateway between worlds closes forever. This was partially bluff, I had no way of knowing if Gandalf and others had succeeded in neutralizing the other cult's cells. But the construct's flickering expression suggested the claim held enough truth to concern it. You cannot destroy me, it snarled. The connection remains through your scar. As long as you live, a path between worlds exists. True, I acknowledged. Which is why I'm not destroying you. I'm returning you. Using the combined power of the Hallows, the wand to direct, the stone to command boundaries of life and death, the cloak to manipulate dimensional states, I created a focused rift. Unlike the cult's crude gateways, this one had a single purpose, to return Voldemort's fragment to its source. No. The construct shrieked as its form began disintegrating, pulled inexorably toward the rift. You don't understand what you're doing. Without me, the fragment in your scar will grow unchecked. Actually, I said with genuine regret, I understand perfectly. The next part would be the most difficult, and potentially fatal. With the construct halfway through the rift, I turned the Hallow's power inward, focusing on the fragment embedded in my scar. For 16 years it had remained dormant, contained by Gandalf's magic and my own natural resistance. But true elimination had always been impossible without killing me in the process. Until now. The Hallows offered a different approach, not destruction, but separation. Focusing my will through the artifacts, I carefully extracted the fragment from my scar. The pain was excruciating, like having part of my soul torn away, which in some sense was exactly what was happening. The fragment had been with me so long it had integrated partially with my own life force. Blood ran freely down my face as the fragment emerged, a writhing shadow pulled from the lightning scar. I directed it toward the rift, joining it with the disintegrating construct. You'll die without it, the construct gasped, its form now barely recognizable as humanoid. It sustained you all these years, just as you've sustained it. That's a risk I'll have to take, I replied through gritted teeth, maintaining concentration despite the agony. With a final surge of will, I pushed both construct and scar fragment completely through the rift, then sealed it with the Hallow's power, not temporarily as before, but permanently, burning out that specific pathway between worlds. The backlash sent me staggering. Blood poured from my scar, and darkness edged my vision. I fell to my knees, the Hallows still clutched in my hands, their power now the only thing keeping me conscious as my life force fluctuated dangerously. Around us, the chamber descended into chaos. Without the construct's guidance, the cultists fought desperately against Aragorn, Legolas, and the now freed prisoners. But their coordination had shattered, their power source eliminated. Through fading consciousness, I sensed new presences entering the chamber, Gandalf's distinctive magical signature accompanied by multiple powerful allies. The cavalry had arrived, just slightly too late for the main battle. My last thought before darkness claimed me was simple satisfaction. For the first time in my life, I was truly, completely myself, no fragment of another's soul sharing my existence. Whether I would survive that separation remained to be seen. But I had made my choice, and I regretted nothing. Chapter 3, The Master's Choice. Dying feels weird. Not painful exactly, more like dissolving. Bit by bit, your sense of self unravels at the edges. I'd been hovering in this in-between state for hours. Days. Time gets fuzzy when you're mostly dead. The Hallows kept me tethered, though. I could feel them, the wand pulsing with raw power, the stone anchoring me to the boundary between worlds, the cloak preserving what remained of my life force. They wouldn't let their master go so easily. Voices drifted through the haze occasionally. Gandalf's deep rumble. Aragorn's measured tones. Legolas speaking rapid Elvish. And someone else, someone whose voice pulled at me more insistently than the others. Harry. A cool hand touched my forehead where the scar still burned. Come back to us. Arwen. I forced my eyes open, light stabbing painfully after so long in darkness. Her face hovered above mine, those ancient eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Welcome back, she said softly. How long? My voice came out as a rasp. 5 days. She helped me sip water from a cup. Gandalf wasn't certain you would wake at all. My surroundings slowly came into focus, a chamber in Rivendell, sunlight filtering through leaf-shaped windows. Somehow I'd been transported from Minas Tirith's depths all the way back to Elrond's domain. The Hallows, I managed, trying to sit up. Pain shot through my body, and Arwen gently pressed me back. Safe, she assured me. They remain with you, though Gandalf suggested separating them for your recovery. You refused, rather forcefully, even while unconscious. That tracked. I could sense them nearby, the wand and stone on a table beside the bed, the cloak draped across my legs. Their energy had become so intertwined with mine that separation felt impossible now. The cult? Voldemort's fragment? Destroyed, came Gandalf's voice from the doorway. The old wizard looked wearier than I'd ever seen him, but his eyes sparkled with their familiar light as he approached. Or rather, banished back to its origin point. He pulled up a chair beside my bed, opposite Arwen. You took quite a risk, Harry. Removing that fragment could have killed you. Nearly did, I admitted. Indeed. Without the Hallows sustaining you, it would have. Gandalf's expression grew serious. The fragment had integrated with your life force far more than I realized. When you forcibly separated it. I tore away part of myself too, I finished. The empty feeling made sense now, like a wound that went soul deep. Yes. Though your natural resilience is remarkable. Already, your life force regenerates to fill the void. Arwen squeezed my hand. You need rest to complete the healing. What about Minas Tirith? I asked. Denethor? The cultists? All will keep until you've recovered, Gandalf assured me. But since I know your stubbornness will prevent proper rest until your questions are answered. He sighed in fond exasperation. Faramir assumed temporary control of the city's security after we found evidence of his father's magical manipulation. The Palantir has been secured. And the other ritual sites? Osgiliath? Weathertop? Contained, though not without difficulty. Gandalf stroked his beard thoughtfully. The White Council mobilized once I shared your discoveries. Saruman secured Isengard against attempted infiltration. Galadriel reinforced the boundaries near Lothlorien. Even the dwarves joined efforts to seal suspected weak points in their mountain realms. This coordinated response across all peoples of Middle-earth was unprecedented in recent history. I felt a surge of hope that quickly faded as Gandalf's expression remained grave. But? I prompted, recognizing his unspoken concern. But the damage was already done. When you closed that specific pathway and removed the fragment from your scar, the resulting magical backlash created what Galadriel calls a cascade failure. The boundaries between worlds are collapsing more rapidly now, not less. My heart sank. So I made things worse. You prevented immediate catastrophe, Gandalf corrected firmly. Without your action, Voldemort and Sauron would have merged powers completely. But the underlying problem remains: your presence in Middle-earth continues to strain the cosmic architecture. The implications hung heavy in the air. If my very existence here threatened both worlds, what am I open the next chapter and continue? The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.